Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular board meeting for September. It is 7 p.m. Call to order.
Mrs. Barton? Calling the roll, Mrs. Barton.
It was my turn? Okay, sorry. I was focused on something else.
Here. Mr. Bryan?
Here.
Mrs. Fairgrave? Here. Mrs. McCabe? Here. Mr. McNally?
Here.
Ms. Weigel? Here. Mr. Mannheim?
Here. Thank you. Will everyone please rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance.
The flag of the
United States of America.
and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome. Tonight we have two public hearings, so we'll start with those. The first is a public hearing on the fiscal year for 2021 for District 303 budgets. Dr. Chapman, there you are. Thank you.
Hello. Good evening, Board of Education. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk tonight. This will be a little bit different than years past. You've had the narrated version of the budget presentation, which has been unchanged since the July Business Services Committee meeting. I just want to take a moment and remind everybody this is about a 9-month process to walk through our budget. So I think this year, unlike many others, has been more unique, certainly more of a challenge as we got through that process and COVID-19 hit. But I did want to thank and extend appreciation to my colleagues, to the principals of our district, and to you as the Board of Education for your support and your ability to work through some of the challenges of taking a budget and really cutting about $5 million from last year's budget in order to balance. So not to go through everything tonight, but I do just want to summarize the fact that you as a board should feel very proud. This district has maintained fiscal stability that is not common in the state of Illinois. As noted by our 4.0 recognition status by the State Board of Education, this district has shown its ability to have the contingencies and reserves to weather whatever storm may come. Certainly many things have changed in the budget process. Some have gone up and some have gone down. But as a whole, this district has shown that we are always able to balance the budget by the end of the year. And this year will be no different than that. Also, a thank you to the flexibility of our teachers and of our staff to provide very alternate looking learning environments this year. This budget will support that throughout the year, no matter what learning environment we are in. So lastly, I just want to remind everybody our process for the budget. This public budget has been on public display for 30 days, which is required by state law. You as a board are not required to hold a public hearing because you did not have an increase of 5% or more, but we do that typically anyway, just to stay open and transparent. The summary for the budget is the operating fund surplus of just over $500,000, and then operating funds are Fund 10, 20, 40, and 70, and those are the funds that make up your financial profile score. The total funds showing a slight deficit of $498,000, which is an amount that we typically are able to make up during the year as we monitor that. So we'll continue to do budget projections. We're about to finish Q1, and every quarter we do a budget projection. We will keep that even more closer as we go through this fiscal year. So I can answer any questions, or certainly allow for any questions from the community.
Thank you, Dr. Chairman. So at this time, we'll ask for any public comments pertaining to just the budget for D303. Hearing none. All right. At this time, are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay. Then I will close the hearing for District 303's fiscal year 2021 Community Unit School District 303 budget, and we'll take action on that shortly. Thank you, Dr. Kevin. All right.
Thank you.
The next public hearing is the public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 Mid-Valley Special Education Cooperative Budget. Dr. Chapman.
Yeah, similar to the District 303 budget, nothing has really changed since the last presentation in July. On behalf of Nancy Spohr, the business official, and Dr. Lisa Colossi, just wanted to let you know that they follow the same budget process that we do. They've made significant reductions in their Fund 20, their capital and operations expense, to balance their budget as well. If there are any questions, I can certainly answer those for you.
All right, at this time, are there any public comments pertaining to Mid-Valley's budget? Not seeing any, all right. At this time, are there any board comments for the Mid-Valley budget? All right, then I will close the hearing for fiscal year 2021 Mid-Valley Special Education Cooperative Budgets. Thank you, Dr. Chairman. All right, that concludes our public hearings for the evening. Our next item is citizens' comments.
The school code provides for a public comment period at each board meeting, subject to reasonable constraints. The practice of this board is to limit public comment to 3 minutes per speaker, to a total of 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Speakers addressing the board are expected to maintain a reasonable level of civility. Also, personnel matters are sensitive and confidential. Comments regarding individuals should be respectful. Insults and defamatory remarks have no place in this setting. The board will terminate public comment if speakers cannot adhere to these guidelines. Please identify yourself at the beginning of your remarks.
Thank you, appreciate it. Quick clarification, we had a few comments, or two, that were signed up for the end of meeting. It looks like a Mark and a Michelle. Were those intended to be the beginning of the meeting or end? End?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you, just want to clarify that. All right, and a quick note, we do have several speaking tonight, so as Ms. Barker said, we do have a 30-minute time limit, or 3 minutes, so everyone can kind of adhere to that 3 minutes. Hopefully we can get through all of the comments tonight. So Ms. Schwartz will keep time, so if you guys can kind of just keep that and then just be respectful of that, so we can try to get to everyone tonight. All right, with that being said, our first speaker is Danielle Franzetti. Daniel, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Dan Franzetti, and I'm the proud parent of two St. Charles East students. I'm here today to urge you to reopen the high schools for in-person learning. Simply, remote learning is not working. It's an abomination, and it's hurting our children academically, emotionally, and socially. And it's happening on your watch. There are 3 points I want to make tonight. Confirm the will of this community, remind you of the board commitments, and implore you to honor both by figuring it out. 87% of the community, of the high school community, voted for in-person learning. That tells you that the will of this community is in-person learning. If you have any doubt, listen and watch what's happening outside. Here's what I don't understand. This is the same community that put their faith in you by voting for you. They did so because they expect you to fight and advocate for their kids. Yet here you are ignoring the will of the community and not supporting in-person learning. Further, if you look at your own website, there are a series of commitments that the board has made. These are your commitments. These don't go away due to COVID. If anything, they're far more important during COVID. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll only discuss 2 of them. The first commitment, provide learning opportunities responsive to the whole student. Is remote learning responsible to the whole student? Absolutely not. Sitting in isolation in front of a computer screen is not life. For precisely this reason, we've been trying to get our children away from screens. Second board commitment is allocate community resources responsibly to ensure exemplary student growth, academic achievement, and positive social and emotional development. Does remote learning fulfill this commitment? Absolutely not. Our children are not growing. They are stagnating in this environment. CDC is reporting a rise in teenage suicide. That's happening. Okay, is that positive social and emotional development you want? So not only have you ignored the will of this community, they put their faith in you, you've not lived up to your commitments. So finally, I urge you to honor the will of this community. You need to find a solution. You need to figure it out. Okay, I read your bios. You're all well accomplished in the field, many of you in education yourselves. You also seemingly had it figured out at one point until you pulled it back. You've also figured it out for elementary schoolers and middle schoolers. School districts all across the country have figured it out. Some close to us here. You'll need to figure it out eventually, okay? Remote learning doesn't end when there's a vaccine, or vaccinations will take time and people will choose not to vaccinate. Remote learning ends when you figure it out. Okay, so what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for legal proceedings? At this point, it's inevitable. So I know it's not an easy problem to figure out. You have an entire community behind you to help figure it out. Community has doctors and lawyers and professionals and IT, education, all across the spectrum. Put a call out to the community. They will help you. Make that call. So to conclude, I implore you, no, I beg you, figure it out. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Tabitha Franzetti and Skylar Meach.
Our names are Tabitha Franzetti and Skylar Mish, and we are both seniors at St. Charles East. We also both have brothers who are freshmen this
Just
year.
interject, if the speakers could please leave their masks on, as we are asking all of the board members to do, we appreciate
We've
it.
attended East for 4 years, so we know what our education there should and can look like. So we can confidently say that our education online isn't what it could be in person. While my teachers are trying their hardest to make it work, it's not working. We do recognize that this is a tough decision and we are in unprecedented times. So we appreciate your dedication to ensuring the safety of students and staff. When my mom emailed wondering why we couldn't go back to in-person learning, the response was, we couldn't go back online because AP students would be at a disadvantage. While the concern about the small portion of AP students that would remain online is real, it is not outweighed by the majority who would benefit from in-person classes. If the belief is that AP kids who remain online would be at a disadvantage, aren't all of us at a disadvantage if we remain online? Furthermore, it's frustrating that I know both Skylar and I, our brothers, and our peers feel we're old enough to choose to go to school or not. We recognize the health risks of sending ourselves to school, and by making that decision, we fully understand and are ready to follow appropriate safety regulations if it means we can be in person. We are also ready to help fellow students follow regulations.
I could come in and tell you I miss my friends, I want to have fun at football games, or I want to go to homecoming for my senior year. But that's not the message I want to share. More important is my future and how prepared I am for college. Currently, I'm struggling to pay attention in my 75-minute class periods. Specifically in AP Calc, it's very hard not being able to work out problems with my peers during class. I believe working out problems with my classmates is incredibly important to my understanding of math. I recognize each level will prepare me for the next, but I need and want to be prepared for college. This is my future, my life, and I need to be the best I can be. I can't achieve my fullest potential when instruction is online. Furthermore, e-learning is extremely isolating because I don't have support from my peers. I'm a hands-on and visual learner, so not being able to work in groups and problem solve together is harmful to my learning. I never really realized how much I relied on support from my classmates until just me and my screen in my room. Both of us feel we aren't getting sufficient college prep. Online learning limits opportunities we have to seek in-person help, such as college workshops or college essay workshops and college fairs. Currently, we are waiting on email replies that can take days to set up meetings rather than being able to simply walk into our counselor's office and receive an immediate answer. We urge you to bring us back in person immediately. We thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kimber McCoy.
Good evening. My name is Kimber McHugh. I currently have a junior and a sophomore at East. My oldest graduated from East in 2018. I graduated from St. Charles High School in 1990, my husband in 1988. I've lived here in St. Charles since 1976 and my husband since 1983. I'm telling you these things because I want all of you to know how important it was to my husband and me that we raised our boys where we grew up, for them to get to attend the same great schools that we did. Our roots are very deep in this community. We have always supported and we have always sponsored our boys' school. And we have always tried to be advocates for District 303. I've always been proud to St. Charles High School, the staff, the administrators, and teachers. I've been proud to be an alumni of St. Charles High School. I was proud to see my kids attend the high school where their dad and I first met. However, as of late, I am no longer proud. Instead, I'm disappointed. I'm upset. I'm not okay with the decisions that have been made for my children's education. I see my kids frustrated every day with e-learning. My youngest feels on display when having to mic up to answer a question. He says it is far less stressful answering a question when inside a classroom than when on a computer screen. They are not able to engage like they would if they were inside the classroom. My son, who is a junior, in my opinion, the most critical year of high school, is stressed because he will soon have college applications to fill out. And while other schools are open and having opportunities to have in-person learning, getting to participate in clubs and other activities, he is stuck at home, having nothing to add to his college applications. Both of my kids have classes that they were unable to log into and therefore missing more class instruction. This is not the caliber of education my kids deserve. It certainly is not what my tax dollars should be paying for. The majority of parents and students wanted to be back to in-person learning at some capacity. Elementary kids are back to everyday in-person learning. Middle school is on hybrid. And yet our high school kids are stuck at home in front of a screen for 7 hours a day. Nobody can tell me that this is okay for them physically or mentally. It is time for our high schoolers to get back to in-person learning. It is time for you, the administration, and everyone else that works for this school district to start advocating for the majority. District 303, you can do better. Our kids deserve better. Your high school students deserve better.
Our next speaker is Kathleen Barinski.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Kowalczyk, parent and member of the reopened D303 High School group. Thank you for your time this evening. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to Carol Smith for her timely responses to all the inquiries over the last few months. Her job has been far from easy. I'd like to share a couple things here tonight. I have 2 children at North. I'm here for them, but also for the other thousands of children that fill our high schools. As we all know, senior year is a big year for our students. This is a time that they make critical life decisions, take critical tests, and have many experiences that last them a lifetime. Our high schoolers, especially seniors, have been out of contact with teachers, counselors, coaches, staff, and peers since March. Yes, 6 full months with no end in sight. Many are lost, confused, and anxious, and have little interaction from the people that guide and support them through these times. While you may think an abundance of long emails and virtual meetings fulfills the void of face-to-face interaction, I'm here to tell you differently. I had reached out to Ms. Christensen with the suggestion of bringing the seniors in for a face-to-face meeting, of course following the IDPH guidelines, as a pulse check for college next steps. I offered to help in any way I could to get this done, as this can and should be done for these children. I received an email back from Mr. Peters saying he would suggest it at an upcoming staff meeting. I've not heard back. I then sent an email to all of you suggesting the same thing with the hopes of getting the momentum going. I heard back from Carol Smith stating that you, Dr. Pearson, were appreciative of my suggestion to bring seniors back to meet with counselors during the pivotal time in their college process. You were going to have conversations with the high school administrators about what it could look like. I quote, "We understand that being in person to have questions answered would benefit both students and parents. I learned last week from my son's guidance counselor that no such meetings will be taking place. Dr. Pearson, I have faith in your words. I truly believe you cared and would make this happen, only to disappoint once again in the leadership that sits here right in front of me." I'll close with this. I received a call from my son's Greek health teacher last week, letting me know my son received a failing grade on a quiz, which now meant he was failing in class. Sorry. I'll add, my son has completed all of their assignments with 100% completion in points. As our conversations continued, I asked, is he asking questions and participating through an online class? He responded with, I honestly can't answer that. I have 30 plus students in my class. Wow, 30 plus students in class. I asked if my son could come in for help and was told no, that in-person is not an option. But he could have a phone call with my son as a resource to help him. This is not a solution. I talked with my son and asked, and he said he cannot learn this way behind a screen. My point here right now is I want to say I now have to pay a tutor to help my son at a cost of over $400 a month because his very own school is not willing to give him the help or resources he deserves or has a right to. I'm sure my son is just one of many who are struggling in classes with the online method of teaching. I can't begin to imagine the stress of students who are suffering from a lack of in-person teaching and resources while not having the means for extra help. This isn't okay and it's not acceptable. All of you are failing our children. We are here tonight to say, let's work together. We need a plan and a timeline for return to in-person instruction, extracurricular activities to be restored, and staffing issues to be resolved. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Zach McClure.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Zach McClure, and I'm a senior at North, and I'm a varsity football and lacrosse player. First off, I want to thank the board, Principal Christensen, and Mr. Dolney for the opportunity to have additional contact days with our coaches. We miss being with each other. I also want to thank Coach Pomazek for all the time he has spent on the return to play plan. I want to play football this fall, but that's not what I'm focusing on tonight. I'm a student athlete, taking AP and honors courses my senior year, and I'm very frustrated that we are not following the hybrid model we were allowed to choose this summer. The all-day Google Meets give me headaches. I know our teachers are trying to connect with us, but the level of connection I need is just not possible online. I'm stressed trying to figure out how to manage difficult courses through this online format, and I know I'm not alone. I watched my brother, who's the 7th grader at Redling, get to go to school, and it's like a punch to the face. E-learning may be a good option for some, but 87% of us wanted the hybrid options. We need the district to figure out a way to meet our needs for in-person learning. I know the answers are not easy, but I also know that this district and teachers can be creative and meet the needs of all students, not just those who chose e-learning. Please do everything possible to reopen second quarter. We only get one senior year. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Kathleen Barinski.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Barinski. I am the parent of a junior at North and the aunt of a senior at North. And I'm the administrator of the private self-funded reopened D303 high schools group of almost 700 parents and members. So I sat in the August board meeting where only a handful of parents were present and heard multiple times from the board members. We've never been here before. We're not experts in this issue. The time for using that as an excuse for failing our children's future is over, because not only have 35 other states who've never been here before and aren't experts figured out how to make a hybrid program work for their high school students, our neighboring Geneva has as well. In Geneva, there is almost double the COVID death rate of St. Charles and South Elgin combined. Geneva clearly better understands the metrics. Your extremely weak actions of scrapping the hybrid high school plan in the final weeks before the start of school has left 87% of your 5,000 students feeling ignored and dismissed. Over the past 10 days, and here tonight, I've heard countless stories of the utter failures of remote learning, including my own, that have run the gamut from failing equipment and oversized classes to anxiety and depression due to isolation. You're not just robbing these kids of their memories and milestones. You're robbing them of the highest quality education that they can get, their mental health and their social well-being. For some kids, it's not just my head hurts and looking at a screen all day, which are bad enough. For some, it's maybe I'll cut myself today. Maybe I'll try that vodka while my parents are at work. Maybe I'll go out to a store and shoplift because no one cares and I feel alone. We won't even know the true effects of how deep this e-learning isolation will affect our children until perhaps years later. Lastly, you're underestimating these students. These are the same children who over the summer you trusted to wait on you in restaurants, check and bag your groceries, lead your kids as camp advisors, walk your dogs and bus your tables. Yet now you condemn them to developing a relationship with their teachers from their bedrooms on a 15-minute Zoom call with 30 kids present and no time to ask questions. My father was a high school teacher for over 35 years in District 207. The most valued feedback he received in all his years from a student was published in one of the yearbooks. Mr. Granzik didn't teach me so much about English as he did about life. Remote learning is an insurmountable barrier to developing a very special bond between teacher and students. Teachers are working twice as hard to make a connection, and it's not working. E-learning should be one option, not the only option. We are asking for two things: an immediate plan and timeline for in-person learning and extracurricular activities to be restored and staffing issues resolved. And two, be real heroes for your students. Hold your leadership accountable. We're watching, we're not going away, and the kids are paying attention and their futures depend on it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pam Ashley.
Hi, I'm a North parent and part of the self-funded Open DO3 parent group. Today should be the start of the high school homecoming week for North. The last high school memories for homecoming our seniors will ever have, but those have been taken away. These kids do not get another senior year. Do you remember your senior memories? I know I do. I grew up here in St. Charles. I remember homecoming week and building the bonfire. I share those memories along with many other with my kids. What memories are these kids going to have from this year? A blank yearbook? Remote learning is not learning. It takes away the important interaction between the student, their teachers, and their peers. They are missing out on opportunities to just pop in after class and stop in and talk to their teacher. What happens when the internet or Google Meet doesn't work? Or worse yet, if they get a teacher that's doing the bare minimum. The lag time from the internet is causing kids not to ask questions because a lot of times they have to continually repeat themselves or risk talking over other students. Most students are locked in their room for most of the day, staring at a screen, resulting in extreme headaches. Then add in additional screen time for homework and then time to maybe catch up with their friends. That's way too much screen time. When our kids break down from the frustration of e-learning and isolation from the e-learning, when they break down with the fear that they won't have any senior memories or worry about their downgraded education that's going to hurt their college chances, what are we supposed to say to them? Every additional day, these high school students are out of the classroom adds to the academic, mental, and emotional stress these young adults are dealing with. Teachers are essential. You are the ones that chose to do this to them. What do you have to say to them? What was once a highly ranked district that I was very proud to say I was a part of is now failing our students. And I have to say, I am extremely ashamed of this district right now and everything you are doing to our children. I don't know how you can be okay with this. We are asking for a plan and a timeline for immediate in-person learning and extracurricular activities to be restored and staffing issues to be resolved. This reopened District 303 parent group would like to work together with you and the board and everything possible to reopen our school as soon as possible. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kathy McGinley.
Hello, my name is Kathy McGinley. I'm a parent of an East student and a member of the private self-funded reopened D303 high school group. Darling, how was school today? This is day one. Great, it was so fun. Going on now. Second day. Darling, how was school today? Oh, it was fun. It was great. It was so interesting. Day three. How was school? Boring. Day four. How was school? Boring. How was school? Next day. Next day. Next. Finally, I said, why is school boring? Mom, I stare at a screen all day. Well, that's what got me here. And in this wonderful group of women that I'm involved with, and men. So Illinois State Board of Education wrote this fall 2020 Learning Recommendations booklet, which I'm sure you've all read. On page 87, under the high school remote learning heading, it states, quote, remote instruction offers many learning possibilities, but student engagement can be easily compromised by the lack of face-to-face interaction. We learned in the spring that the relationships that we built prior to remote learning were vital for all student success, end quote. So what do we have now? These students have no prior relationships with their students. So this is an issue. And on page 89, under the heading, collective responsibilities, it states, quote, the responsibilities of education fall on all invested parties, instructors, students, caregivers, which I think that means parents, right? Or caregivers, school administrators, professionals, and support personnel. All parties will need to consistently work together to maximize student learning as we navigate unprecedented situations, end quote. So, in conclusion here, let's be unified, please. All of us, everybody. Let's have love and not hate. Let's have compassion and not aggravation. As Abraham Lincoln took a quote from Jesus, a house divided against itself will fall. District 303 E-News, dated 9/4, which I have here, had some very exciting news from all of you, quote, the aim is to return high school students to in-person instruction during the second quarter, end quote. I was jumping up and down. I was so excited. So thank you for giving us hope, but we would like it sooner. So that's why we're asking you to just please work with us, work with this lovely group that I've joined. We really all want to just work together. And if you would allow us, you have all of our emails. You can get a hold of any of us, and we would love to work together. And let's be unified to let our children, I'll wrap it up, because I know you're probably tired of listening to all of us, but I'll wrap it up and just say, our children have lots of passions, and these clubs doing remote work, remote online, they need to be in person, just like here. The clubs can meet, just like here. It's nice that the sports people can be active and meeting with their friends and doing their activities. My daughter's involved in choir. I'm begging you to let her sing. When it was hybrid, when she didn't have her fine arts camp, I'll just wrap this up. She didn't have her fine arts camp. She couldn't go, Mommy, but I'm looking forward to my 2 choirs, chorale, which she got into, and jazz. I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. She was living for that. Every day she said that. And then we got the email, no singing. And I had a conversation with Denise Herman, and this was very upsetting. So I'm begging you to let them sing. They can, I think, be in a room for 30 minutes. I go to church every Sunday, hour, 15 minutes. I sing as loud as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joe Cage.
Hello, my name is Joe Cave. Never spoken to one of these before. I'm not really a get involved kind of guy. I'm here on behalf of my 3 kids who are all D303 students, particularly my freshman at St. Charles North, who to this day has not had a moment of in-person instruction. I'd like to use my limited time tonight to remind the board of the oath that each and every one of you took when you assumed the office. And I'd ask you to reflect on whether your response to in-student learning is consistent with the values espoused in that oath. The first part of which, I'll quote as follows: "You all promise to, quote, serve as education's advocate on behalf of students." I don't know on whose behalf you made the decision to deny our high school students in-person learning, but it wasn't on their behalf. Every public authority, from the IDPH to the CDC, all agrees that denying them in-person learning causes more harm than the virus itself. They're simply not at risk. It is perhaps then on behalf of the teachers, or perhaps the elderly relatives of the students or teachers for which you made this decision. I think it's debatable whether the teachers need such protection, but regardless, it's beside the point. The board's mandate is not to advocate for teachers. I dare say the teachers union is doing more than a good enough job at that. It's your job to advocate for students. Second, each board member promised to, quote, ensure that students have the opportunity to obtain their maximum potential. My wife and I chose the house we live in to be in D303 because we wanted them to reach their maximum potential. I don't think anyone can argue with a straight face that sticking a kid in front of a Chromebook for 6 hours a day is a path to reach their maximum potential. You've heard from several people tonight that it's not working. The last part I'd like to address, but the first oath that you take is that you promise to, quote, respect taxpayers' interests. These are the taxpayers who voted you into office. They're the taxpayers who pay 3 to 4 times the national average in property taxes and who rightly expect a level of service commensurate with that price tag. They're the taxpayers, 87% of whom said they wanted in-student learning, and we don't have it for our high school students. Trust me when I say that the board is not more concerned about our students' health and well-being than we, their parents, are. We know what's good for them. We know what they need. They need to be back in school. Thank you for your time.
Board, we reached our 30-minute time limit, but we have 3 speakers left. Would you like to hear them? Yes. All right, excellent. Then our next speaker is, I'm going to not do a Zhang Li. Okay. Nope.
How do you spell
Xiaoson.
Yeah.
No, what's that?
Tracy McGrath, is that on there?
It is not.
She signed it.
Yeah, I was after Zach McClure. I was here like 20 minutes, 30 minutes before the meeting. So I signed.
I apologize, and I apologize. I might have missed that one. So would you like to speak, Tracy? I apologize if I skipped over it. There's a lot of.
I don't think I was behind there.
You're right. I remembered the names because I wasn't sure how they were called.
Just come on up. Come on up. So Tracy McGrath.
Good evening. I'm a parent of a North student and member of the private self-funded reopened D303 high school group. This is my second year with a pandemic high school senior. Yay me! I speak today on behalf of all students who are sitting behind screens feeling frustrated and hopeless while mourning the loss of their favorite sports and activities that bring them confidence and self-worth. For my son, the untimely loss of spring baseball season was devastating at such a critical time for varsity play and college recruiting. The looming months of isolation and constant state of uncertainty caused my son to experience severe anxiety and depression. which affected our entire family. Our teens are in a developmental stage where it is critical that they have regular contact with peers and are able to develop and maintain positive relationships with adults outside their home, such as teachers, coaches, and advisors. Our seniors should be walking the halls with their heads held high, enjoying their final months of high school. Instead, they are feeling left behind, deserted by their school, district, and state. Our kids know they are falling behind their peers in other districts and states. They have such anxiety about their immediate futures. So many feel they are just spinning their wheels unproductively, trying to get an ACT test, applying for scholarships, or will I even get into college? We know so many kids already struggle with self-esteem problems, anxiety, depression, and substance abuse. A recent CDC survey found adolescents are the hardest hit group for pandemic-related anxiety and depression. 11% surveyed said they had considered suicide in the past 30 days. Meanwhile, mental health services are in an extreme shortage, and contact with school psychologists and counselors is limited to non-existent for remote students. As a parent paying top tax dollars in a highly rated school district, I find the current situation completely unacceptable. It is the job of our school district and board to ensure students of all ages receive a quality education that promotes positive mental health. I still do not understand why the hybrid model went south in the final hours when the majority of families voted for this. Please develop a plan now to incorporate in-person learning for our high schools, as so many other districts have. Thank you.
Let's have Mr. Reed here then.
Good evening. My name is Xiaosong Wu, and I'm a parent of a junior at the St. Charles East and a middle school student at Redmond Middle School. I just want to tell the story because I have heard many comments already. I just want to tell the true story of what happened in my own family. As you're aware, we spent most of the summer, I appreciate school district, the summer to communicate, emails, surveys, all the documents about a well-established hybrid plan according to CDC and IDPH guidelines. But 2 weeks before that, all of a sudden there was another email coming with certain change. So what's most difficult for me is to explain to my high school student, his name is Andrew. Andrew was very happy to learn they are going to go to school 50% of the time, 1 day off when they go to school. He was happy. But now all of a sudden something else came without any explanation why high school was picked out of the whole plan, because he's seeing his brother, Redmond Middle School, going to school now, every other day. We have a hard time explaining to him what is wrong with high school students. So if we think high school students is not good enough to be able to listen to the guidelines, that's the failure of education itself. It's very hard for me to explain what is wrong with high school students. So with that, I just want to respectfully ask school board to seriously consider, and as well as learning from the success so far with middle school and elementary school in the same district, in the same area. So to learn from their successes and also to, we understand health is very important, safety, but as we have heard many parents' perspectives, it is very important for them to have a social and emotional health, sometimes even above and beyond the temporary academic aspects. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you very much.
Allison Murnane, next speaker.
Hello, my name is Allison, and I have a freshman and a senior at St. Charles East. This year has been proven to be difficult for everyone, and while I appreciate the work you all do, I do believe you have failed 3,871 children, the 87% of high schoolers who wanted in-person learning. Shame on you. It's becoming increasingly difficult to watch other districts start in person while our kids get left behind due to staffing problems. As someone who's worked in human resources for almost 30 years, this is unacceptable. There has to be a solution. There are many districts, both larger and smaller, that have come up with creative solutions to make hybrid learning work around their staffing issues. Burlington uses Zoom to teach both remote and hybrid learners at the exact same time. Another Friends district also Zooms in their teacher for a teacher who cannot teach in classroom. They go to a study hall type classroom and they Zoom the teacher in. So they're there for most of their classes, learning in person, and maybe one or two are the teachers are Zoomed in. Yorkville is able to accommodate 25% of their students remotely, 50% hybrid, and even 25% go full-time in person. These are just a few of the creative solutions that other schools are doing. What are you doing? E-learning is fine as a temporary plan, but it is not a one-size-fits-all solution. I think I'm not alone in saying that my kids are struggling both emotionally, academically, and are not getting the education they need and deserve. My senior said to me the other day that e-learning is just okay. But why should my education, especially my senior year, be just okay? For a senior, it's excruciatingly difficult to see his peers from around the region, state, and country get the advantage of in-person learning, the advantage of in-person resources such as clubs, tutoring, library, extracurriculars, college counseling, and even the ability to take finals, which we aren't even doing. The students that are allowed in-person learning are at an advantage, and our students are left behind. As a parent and a taxpayer, it's difficult to see neighbors in other districts boast about how proud they are of their school district for getting kids back in person. It's hard to hear how happy their kids are to be in school every other day, while our kids sit miserable behind a computer for 5 to 7 hours a day. It's difficult to drive downtown Geneva at 2:30 and watch the kids walk home happily after school, just being able to interact with their peers for a few minutes. In July, the board announced it was going to hybrid learning. Patty Pelagi and others spoke for a better part of 90 minutes on social and emotional well-being. However, I've yet to see little action in regards to this, other than maybe a survey or checking in with their students. During the presentation, it was said that clubs would be allowed to meet in person, but to my knowledge, not even one club has met in person, all on Zoom. Nothing has been done to create a feeling of school spirit. There's no sense of community, no feeling of togetherness, all things that can have an effect on a child's social and emotional well-being. Shame on you. Apparently, the 90 minutes spent on social and emotional well-being was all talk and no action. Stop waiting around for a solution. It's time to get back in school, be a hero for our kids, and get them back to school today. Thank you.
My husband and I are coming up together. We'll only take up the allotted time. My name is Teresa Campbell, my husband Mike Campbell, and we have 2 students in the high school. We have a junior and a freshman, and we are part of that 87% that voted to have in-person teaching, and my kids are very disappointed. They're lacking the emotional and social interactions that they need with their peers and with their teachers, and they want to be in school. They don't understand why the elementary school and the middle school is allowed to have this privilege that they should be allowed to have also. And I'm very disappointed in this board that has made this decision to keep our high schoolers at home in front of a computer when other schools are opening, private schools, which leads me to believe that I don't understand why this teachers union has hijacked our schools. I don't know if this is a political ploy that everybody is trying to accommodate, but it is very unfair I am so appalled that our district took our registration money and our parking fees, knowing that our kids can't drive to school, they're not in person. And yeah, I'm just so disappointed in this board. We've always been very proud of our school district. We live in this school district because we're proud of this district. My husband went to school here, grew up in this community, and we live here because we wanted a good education for our children. And our high school students are being deprived of this, and it is unacceptable, unacceptable. And if it's a problem with the teachers that are afraid of germs, then please find another profession, because children come with germs.
Campbell. I'm a longtime resident of St. Charles School District, graduate of St. Charles High School '85, and also a graduate of Haynes Junior High. I want to talk a little bit. I've heard through some discussions with many other parents that one of the main obstacles to having the students return to in-person class is that many of the teachers are opposed to it. Teachers don't want to come back to class and teach the students because the teachers, some of the teachers are afraid that they'll get sick or something. Here's my opinion on that matter. If the teachers refuse to come to school and teach students in person, which is the job that they were hired and are paid to do, then what should happen to the teachers who refuse to do that is the same thing that would happen to me if I refused to do my job, which is I would be fired. That's all.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes citizens' comments. Next item is the superintendent's report. Dr. Christian?
Well, good evening. Tonight I'll be splitting my report into really two different sections. We're going to talk a little bit later about the high school reopening plan and remote learning that's on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I thought is that all the comments? Because I signed up to speak too. Oh, okay, so how do you set up now? Oh.
You gotta wait.
Oh, okay. It's a nice little organization you guys got here. Do a hell of a job. You good.
So we'll be talking about that a little bit later for the report discussion. I would just like to update you on a couple of items. On Friday, the National Merit Organization actually announced the National Merit semifinalists. And we currently have 3 students from St. Charles East and 6 students from St. Charles North that have been named as National Merit semifinalists. And so they will be proceeding through the process to the next step in the process, which will be consideration for the finalists. As you know, we do bring those to the board for recognition when the time is right, as that process is complete. So we look forward to having those students present for recognition at a later point. And then I also wanted to mention that at the Charles H. Haynes Center, which houses the library and the transition program and a Park District program, the Daily Bean, which is our transition program coffee shop, has opened. And so our transition students are working there and providing coffee. And so it's a service to the public library, but it's also open to other members of the public. So we would encourage you to stop by if you have the opportunity to do so. That program is open from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Each day. And it's right inside the vestibule, inside the library entrance. I also just wanted to mention immunizations and physicals. We are going to be talking a little bit later about the plan to reopen the high school and what that could look like going forward. But I also would just like to mention that the state did send out a communication that they are holding to the October 15th deadline for immunizations and physicals. So they're required to attend public schools in Illinois, and we do have some people, because of the pandemic, that have yet to complete that requirement. Our nurses have sent out notices to families. They've been calling, getting information about free clinics that are available in the area. So please don't wait if that's something that you need to do. Make sure that you have completed those requirements, because we certainly do want you to be able to participate in anything in person that we're able to offer. We also want to make sure, particularly in a time like this, when we're facing a pandemic situation with COVID, that we are meeting all of the requirements related to other immunizations as well. So I just wanted to mention that, and I will say our nurses are really working hard to try to help families access whatever they need to get that done. So if you're a family that's in that situation, please feel free to reach out to a nurse at the school. They'll be happy to connect you with a resource if that's something that you need. And that's all for now, Mr. Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. That takes us to our committee reports. We'll start with learning and teaching.
Okay, Learning and Teaching met on August 17th. We began, of course, with the superintendent update, and much of that was timely at the time, and we've received more recent updates, so I'll pass that. It was a rather full meeting regarding some other items. We had for discussion the Early Learning Partnership update. This was a continued item of discussion from Business Services Committee. The role of the CUSD 303 in this is to be the custodian of funds, primarily from a grant from the Fox Valley United Way. And Tricia Savathny provided some information on the goals of the partnership and our timelines. So these are some of the highlights. It is a partnership driven by community and community collaboration. The plan is for the year is to listen and invite for all stakeholders, community events, and government structures. Kids investment given to all kindergarten students early in the year. Data indicates 25% of kindergartners were ready when they entered school. We've received a portion of the grant funds available of $8,000. And we're aligning resources across the community to strengthen the services we provide. There's negligible cost for the district. This was a part of an item for discussion. And that was clarified based upon some of the questions we had gotten from the public. There's very little cost to the district itself. District 303 staff members in leadership roles would attend meetings once a month, and the responsibility to become part of their regular duties, so there will be no additional costs associated with that. The next item up was the multi-tiered systems of support update. Mrs. Jen Phillips and Dr. Patty Pelagia presented an update from the MTSS committee. Discussion items included early implementation of MTSS, intentionally started in the elementary schools grades 3 to 5 years ago, with a focus on enrolling from grade school up to high school. High school started Tier 1 focus last year and continues this year. Students will be in need of intervention in all forms of educational delivery, including remote. And the board is requested to be kept up to date and informed as data becomes available. Next up was the D303 educator competencies for in-person, hybrid, and remote learning, and the professional learning plan for the staff. So Dr. Herman had presented, and as well as members of the Learning and Teaching Committee, to provide an overview of the professional learning plan that was put in place for D303 staff. Excuse me. ISB has initiated more rigorous requirements than in the spring, synchronous and asynchronous essential skills for the first quarter. Excuse me. Sites able to utilize modules tailor learning to their specific culture and climate, consistent and flexible framework. Hotspot availabilities for families, that was an item for discussion. How many devices can run efficiently off one hotspot? And have there been conversations in terms of how to support teachers in terms of their instructional practice, both remote and in person? Differentiation and interventions, and how those were going to look different. And the expectations for remote learning need to include consistency, communicating structure and expectations. Being clear is very helpful for the teacher and the learner. Our next meeting, those are just the discussion items for that. Our next meeting is going to be on September 21st. Potential items for discussion are the seal of biliteracy, which should be fairly brief. The District 303 enrollment transition center update on English language and high school small group in-person strategies. Some of these items may become more timely, and so again, these are potential items for discussion, depending on how much time we have for those meetings. Again, that's going to be September 21st, which will be next Monday. at 5:30. And our meeting adjourned at 8:17 with no citizen comments.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Mrs. Fairgrave, Business Services.
Okay, excuse me, the last Business Services Committee meeting was held on August 24th. We reviewed the July 31st, 2020 financial statements for D303 and for the Mid-Valley Special Ed Co-op. We also reviewed a financial update related to COVID-19 expenditures, what was expended in the 2019-2020 time period, and then going forward from July 1st to the 2020-21 financial year. We also received an update on the facility master plan, and that will be discussed in much more detail at our special board meeting on September 24th. And I think it's to be noted that'll be the first opportunity that the board has had to really see significant detail regarding that plan. We also have one item for action tonight related to the food service contract modification. And then finally, we had several items that we reviewed for consent because they were of an annual renewal basis: health insurance consulting, Fast Bridge learning renewal, Spring Castify renewal, and then our annual PSAT testing renewal. The next Business Services Committee meeting will be on September 28th.
Thank you, Mrs. Fairgrave. Mr.
President
Bryant.
Van Heim, may I just say just a quick word? I just want to thank the board. I've been out with health issues and I've been following along, but now I'm back and appreciate everyone's patience and while I was gone. And so I just wanted to say thank you for the time while I was gone.
Mr. Bryant, policy.
Yes, the policy committee met on August 17th. Joining us was Mr. Stan Eisenhammer from legal counsel. He helped us with one of our items for discussion. We had 3 citizen comments, all involving the reopening of the high school for in-person learning. The first item for discussion we had was policy 2105, ethics and gift ban. There was a discussion related to if board members can engage in political activity on district property, whether it's participating in a forum, and then also there was a discussion on just, again, general political activity of board members while in office. No action will be taken on that item. It was just a discussion. We also discussed policy 2110, qualifications, terms, and duties of board officers. The discussion revolved around having term limits moved from 2 years to 1 year. It was decided by the majority of the board that we would like to look at roles of officers at our board retreat on September 24th, and then we would revisit that policy. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. CSE did not meet, but do you guys want to talk about your next meeting?
We meet this week. Tomorrow night is our exec team meeting, which will be run virtually. And on Thursday, then we'll have the entire group. Dr. Chapman's coming to speak about the financial, how we do finances in the school district. So that's Thursday night, also virtual.
Thank you, Mrs. McCabe. As Mrs. Fairgrave and Mr. Bryant mentioned, we are having a board retreat on the 24th. Board members should have that in the calendar, but we'll be discussing the facility master plan as well as the board roles for officers and tournaments. So that concludes our committee reports. That takes us to our 4 action items. Do I have a motion to approve the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 Community Unit School District 303 budget?
So moved.
Second. Mr. McNally? Any discussion? As Mr. Chapman mentioned, Dr. Chapman mentioned earlier, this is a 9-month process, and we've all been participating in all the meetings and everything, and heard our public hearing tonight. No other comments? Ms. Schwarzby, take a roll.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Mr. Ms. Weibel?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Manna?
Yes. Motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 Mid-Valley Special Education Cooperative Budget?
So moved.
Mr. Rinaldi?
Second.
Any discussion or comments pertaining to the Mid-Valley Special Ed? Okay.
Mrs. Fairgren?
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Ms. Weibel?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mr. Manna?
Yes. Motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve the amendment to the food service management agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Berger and Mr. Wright, thank you. Questions or comments pertaining to this? This is an item that was discussed at business services. Mrs. Berger.
Yes, President Manheim, I just want to note to the board that I will not be voting yes for this. At this point, I think that we need to do more due diligence with our food service management groups. The way in which we were planning on distribution of our food service to our high school and our remote learners before our federal grant came through, in my opinion, was not satisfactory to the needs of what our kids need. For free reduced lunch students or students that want to come in and purchase lunches, for any remote users, it is a very difficult process to pre-order. I have started gathering some information and shared that with Dr. Pearson. Before the federal grant came through, we were having our students pre-order the week before for a Monday. It is very difficult for a student that is running by himself or herself in their household to know what kind of groceries they're going to have available in their house. I think that's unrealistic for us to put that expectation on households to have to pre-order in advance. I think we have to come up with different solutions as other high schools have used. And I think if it's not using this particular vendor, then maybe that's what we look into. I don't know. Right now, we do have a reprieve because the federal grant program is helping us financially for those kiddos until December 31st.
Until the money runs out.
Okay, until the money runs out, even less sure. So I feel like we need to do more due diligence as to what a better solution is for those students. So I just wanted to let the board know that I'm not supporting this. And I'd like us to look into a better solution.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Any other comments pertaining to this?
As we were hearing about it at business services, it became clear that there was a concern to be had with the number of lunches and food that we were giving as compared to even the summer, which I think those numbers were still on the low side. And you know, I questioned whether we were doing some of the things that we had done during the summer to increase that number. And then finding out how difficult it was to actually order lunch for our kids who really need it, who are needing, food, who are food insecure, who are just at the point of trying to survive, and then on their own and remote, not even coming into school to get support. I just am concerned how difficult that it was made to be, and I don't feel that it needed to be that difficult. And I feel part of that was possibly this particular service.
I have a question. Is this something that can be resolved with this group? Or do we need to have more discussion before we take a vote?
Are you asking about related to how we order meals? So that's already changed under the way that we're picking up now under the federal program. So that's changed since we implemented the ordering process. I think the challenge at that point that was different than the summer was when school started, we had to be able to track a meal to individual people as opposed to just counting the number of meals that were provided. So over the summer, if we had 45 kids show up to pick up a meal, we counted 45 students and then we handed out 45 meals. During the school year, a meal has to be attributed to a person. And then I think also the food service program was trying to provide some choice for students and families as opposed to just coming and getting whatever is available on that particular day, which is the reason that they put the ordering process in place. I don't know that we used it long enough to realize that it wasn't working. It was a pretty short-term solution at that point, and if that's something that we're concerned about, I certainly think that it's something we can revisit and do in a different way. But the reason for it was to be able to provide choice and then also be able to do the tracking of who was getting meals, because we had to, depending on who it was, they either needed to have their account charged if they're a student who is not on the federal lunch program, or they needed to be credited to free emergency lunch. So that was the purpose of the process.
And Mrs. McCabe, there are different districts that handle different ways. They can do a barcode, or that's what 46 uses. So there's definitely different avenues that are an option for us. But for me personally, I just feel like we need to maybe look into it more before I would feel comfortable saying yes to a contract. So that I just wanted to share that with the board. And just a clarifying point, this is already on the Business Services Committee agenda for September 28th, where we had agreed at the last one that we would have a deeper discussion related to those particular items. What is for action tonight is really a memorandum of understanding or an interim step that allows us a little bit more flexibility in terms of contract cancellations and so forth until we go to the 28th, where we will finalize meal rates at the elementary and middle school level and then the high school piece as well. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Thank you. That was the question I had is really essentially the term of what we're voting on tonight is really relatively short term. And it does buy us a little bit of time to have those discussions, which I think sounds like some of them are at least temporarily a moot point. And I think that in and of itself buys time for not only us, but our food service vendors to react to that. Given that we've had a good relationship with them for the duration of our contract, I wouldn't be ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. I would like to give them the opportunity to respond to concerns.
I think I'm okay with a short term, but as long as it is on the agenda and we are going to be discussing it further and what can be done going future forward, because we don't know when the money will run out.
Yeah, and it absolutely is, and it's also reflected in the committee notes too, so I think we're pretty tight there.
That does bring up a question for me. Do we have any idea as to when that might be? That December 31st was a date that was kind of mentioned, but are we thinking that it's going to be before that or after that, or?
So it's a designated amount of money for every school in the country. It's a federal program. They plan to fund it through December 31st. That's their cutoff date, but it will depend on how many school districts actually apply to be under this particular umbrella. There really were three choices. One was, and Dr. Chapman can maybe speak to this a little bit more. I'm going to have him come to the mic, but there were three different choices, and depending on how many districts chose which bucket, is going to determine how long the money will last.
Okay. So that's not a question about how long the money is going to last for us, but how long it's going to last federally. Correct. So, okay.
Yeah, and we did actually receive clarification late Friday afternoon from ISB. We'd asked a question over a week ago on their webinar when they introduced this about that exact point. Is December 31 a date we can count on? They've come back to us and said that in fact we can count on December 31st. That they hedged that comment prior to that webinar and have gone back and had conversations with the USDA. So we should feel comfortable with December 31st. And I also would just add that this process has not been simple over the summertime, trying to work out the start of the school year. And Dr. Pearson is absolutely correct that part of the issues that we had in terms of creating service deliveries were related to the fact that we did have to identify individual students, and also trying to work around the synchronous learning and trying to find times when kids were not in session has limited the pool. I know I've responded directly to many Let's Talks on this concept, and but whatever shortcomings Quest has had, I'm going to own whatever we need to work on. These were district decisions that Mr. Barrett and I, and mostly myself, made. So when we come back to the 28th, we'll talk about things we can improve. I know Ms. Barker did talk about locations and sites, and we've added, even prior to the USDA, we were going to add those 2 additional sites. over at Cumberland Green and St. Charles Place, and we're open to doing that more and more now, especially that we don't need the sites. But please know that Quest has been very good with working with us on this contract. Certainly it hasn't been perfect, but they've been very responsive.
I appreciate the clarification, Dr. Chapman. I still would like us to be more proactive in kind of the way we're viewing it. I think it's really important that we start putting ourselves in the shoes of some of these students and being more flexible in the high schools. There's certainly people with study halls and things like that, so maybe the pickup times can be more flexible as well. And have someone staff there. I don't know, what that does for Quest budget, but I think it's something that we can look at. So I'm just trying to make a more difficult process as easy as we can for the students that are more in need of it.
Absolutely.
So.
And I will just real quick, because I've got a mic and people might be listening to this. We are now able to allow for pickup at any of our locations. So just because you're a high school student, you can go to the elementary school if that time's better for you, the middle school if that time's better for you. Whatever works best in your schedule, no one's going to get denied. So we've worked with Organic Life, doesn't matter if they're Quest or Organic, they're going to work it all out in the back end. So at least through December 31st, we've got that in place.
But we're still twice a week only.
We are currently still twice a week, yeah. But again, that's something we can look at.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I'm just glad we have some clarification and some certainty on the December 31st date, because that does give us a bit of breathing room to have the discussions and for people to try to right the ship a bit.
All right, thank you, everyone. Trustee, take roll.
Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Ms. Weibel?
No.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mr. Manheim?
Yes, motion passes. All right, that takes us to our last item for action, which is item D. Do I have a motion to approve the quarterly PPE expenditures? So, Mr. Ryan?
Second.
Mr. McNally? Any questions or comments pertaining to item D? Okay. You take roll.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Ms. Weibel?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. Manheim?
Yes, motion passes. All right, that takes us to consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to pull? All right, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. McNally and Mrs. Parker. Any questions or comments pertaining to anything? Okay, Ms. Schwartz.
Ms. Weibel?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Mr. Manheim?
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to our for information, as usual, our FOIA request, financial reports, the COVID financial summary, annual administrator teacher salary benefits report, and then district enrollment. Next item is new business. All right. Then as Dr. Pierce.
No new business, but I want to make my monthly public service announcement to remind people to please go to the committee report. Well, if you can attend the committee meetings, that would be best, but please go online and view the committee reports for more detail. We give you a bit of a thumbnail here, and I just want to remind people again, please go to look at the committee reports so that some of the questions, that have been asked questions by people that were answered in committee, and I'd like for them to know that information is readily available.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. All right, so now I'll take us to our further discussion. As Dr. Pearson mentioned, you can split his report into two, but the purpose of that was so that the board can ask questions, give answers to the two items, which we broke down to remote learning for your first item, and then the high school return to in-person learning update. So we'll start off with remote learning.
Yeah.
So I know that these are two topics that, as a board, you wanted to have an opportunity to discuss and possibly have some questions about tonight. So I wanted to talk about them here and give you a chance to do that. The first topic that we're going to talk about is remote learning. And I do want to take a moment to say, I know tonight we've heard from many families, some parents and students that have significant concerns about remote learning, and I share some of those concerns. I know that clearly, as a district, that's not how we design to deliver instruction, nor is it how we desire to deliver instruction. We understand the social and emotional benefits of in-person learning, and we certainly strive to be able to provide that as much as possible, and we're moving in that direction for all of our students at all of our levels. That being said, we also have some significant constraints on what we are able to do, both from the Illinois State Board of Education, but also more importantly from the Illinois Department of Public Health. And I want to take a moment at this point to say how proud I am of our teachers. They have done an extraordinary job with really challenging resources. And I don't know how many of you do your work every day where there's an audience for you in working. But I just want to remind you that when you are providing remote instruction, not only are students engaged and involved in the classroom, but anybody else that's around or able to see that particular Zoom call could be watching or hearing or listening. And that's something that's really challenging to do. I also want to say that I've been working with teachers all summer and members of our staff all summer as we worked to try to plan for the school year. And our teachers have really taken a solution orientation as we try to problem solve around many of the things that we're facing as a district, as a community, as a state, and as a nation. And it's really important that we don't miss the opportunity to recognize the work that's going on behind the scenes, because it's not visible. It's not public. It's work that teachers are doing at home, at night, at their kitchen table, to try to prepare and ensure that our kids are getting what they need each day when they engage in remote learning. It's also very challenging, and we recognize that. We have technology issues, we have internet issues, we have Chromebook issues, we've had curriculum challenges with trying to get remote curriculum available. But every day our teachers get up and they try to respond to those with as positive an attitude as possible, and so do our students. And so I do want to just make sure that we mention that people are working really hard, and that they really do want what's best, and that they really do want kids in their classroom, and we all want to get there. But in the interim, we have to apply this solution, and we have to do some of these other pieces that are not as desirable as what people might want. And so that's what we're doing. And so as I talk about remote learning, I just want to highlight just a couple of the things that are going on with that at the pre-K and the through 8th grade level. So currently in our elementary through middle school, we have almost 2,000 students that are participating in remote learning. These are the numbers as of, I think, Friday. And so you can see 43 in early childhood, K-5 is 1204, and middle school is 666. You will notice that since the first day of school, 244 students have moved from in-person to fully remote instruction. Now that in itself presents a whole set of issues because we are required to offer remote. We are required to provide that for anyone at any point in the process. As you know, we staffed our classrooms and our remote sections based on what people selected at the beginning of the year at the elementary and middle school level. And so as 244 students have moved over, it has caused some sections to get a little bit larger than what we would like. It has caused some grade levels to go over, and as you can imagine, it doesn't come out of one school or another school in nice, neat packages where we can make adjustments to our sections or our enrollment in any given building or any given course necessarily. So even though 244 students have moved out, that doesn't just translate into that same exact number of teachers. And so as we, Mrs. Geyer is doing a really nice job of trying to watch that at the elementary level, Mr. Moore at the middle school level. And as we have to adjust and we have increasing remote sections, that also may mean that in our buildings, we may have to adjust in-person sections as well when we get to a point that a class section is too small, particularly at the middle school, students may need to be reassigned. We may have to collapse a section of English, for example, and have that teacher maybe teach a remote section to try to help with class size. So these are adjustments that we have been making, and we've been putting that in the newsletter each week to let people know that these kinds of things are coming and that these things will be happening. Unfortunately, they see that, but until it happens to them, they don't necessarily realize that might impact them. But we are having to make more adjustments with sections and class sizes than what we typically would do in a given year. And this is the reason. Now, I will say that since Labor Day, we've seen the number drop off. We don't have as large a number of people that are wanting to make that movement. And so we can attribute some of that to some buildings where we had some cases of COVID that people might have said, you know what, we really don't want to do this, we want to do remote. Or maybe circumstances changed in their family. But just know that as a district, we have to be able to offer that switch in that direction at any given time, and we will continue to respond to it in that way. So the other thing I did want to talk a little bit about is just the technology piece. As you know, we're moving to Zoom, and we hope to have that done this week. And Mr. Smith is nodding yes, which is great. We did finally get the licenses, and we have, what'd you do today? Take over the addresses?
Claim the domain.
He claimed the domain. So we're getting to a place where we're going to be able to move to Zoom, which will address some of the challenges that you heard related to Google Meet and our Chromebook and being able to provide some of the services there. Just know that our tech department, like our teachers, have been really doing a nice job of trying to be accessible and responsive to technology issues. I mean, you can imagine that it can be anything from user error to device error to software issue to internet connection to device on the other end to user on the other end, as we're trying to navigate and problem solve around some of those situations that we find ourselves in. People are getting better, our tools are getting better, and we want to continue to improve with that. So that being said, we are trying to make that movement as soon as possible. So I'm going to pause right here just to see if there's any questions about just remote learning, either curriculum, class sizes, sections, or instructional practices. I know Dr. Herman is available, and Mr. Smith, and anybody else that might need to answer any of those questions before we talk about high school.
The question that I had, I think we're coming at about a month in to the school year. So when will leadership be reporting back to the board in terms of the instructional gaps that were identified at the various grade levels and the action plan to resolve those?
Yeah, I need to just double check the timeline that was in our goals, but I believe it was by October 1. So we have finished the iReady assessment, or we're getting close to finishing the iReady assessment, so we'll have that information. I think I shared with you in my superintendent's report that our high school staff did a gap analysis as part of their professional learning day prior to Labor Day on that Friday. So we're looking forward to having that information as well. So we're compiling that for you, and we'll have that to share.
So we should expect then at the October board meeting that we would have the data and action plans or recommendations.
Yes, at the latest.
Okay, thank you.
Have we had any requests for people to move from remote back into the classroom? I know we originally said we can only move one way, but this seems to be a major issue with 244 students moving into remote sections. Is it even logistically possible to move these kids back into the classroom?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the answer to that is it depends. So what we have said at this point is that you really need some kind of rationale or reason to be moving back to in-person learning if you chose remote for the semester, which is what we ask people to commit to. But we are seeing that the remote sections are becoming large as well. And so if there is a family that wants to move back to in-person, and for most people, the reason they're choosing remote is for some kind of health or medical concern. So they're not probably going to do that. But if they do need to do that, then they need to contact either Mr. Moore or Mrs. Geyer to have a conversation. They have to put in a formal request. We have made some of those changes for students that have instructional needs that were identified. Maybe they're a part of a special program that we offer in the district, and they chose remote, but it would be better for them to be in person. So it's on a case-by-case request basis, and they have to put in a request.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe as we go along, maybe, we're about a month into the school year, people are starting to feel a little safer. They're seeing, what's going on in their elementary schools right now. Maybe they say, okay, it's okay to send my kid back to school. And again, that will alleviate some of the issues we're having with these class sizes increasing in the virtual classroom.
And you brought up another really important point. I mean, part of our challenge for in-person learning at the elementary in particular is because we are offering it every day on a shortened schedule, our class size is limited to the capacity of the room. So that was the other point I wanted to make. So in many of our buildings, we're maxed out at 15, 16, 14, 20, depending on the size of the classroom and the number of students that could possibly fit in that space. And so today we have a request from a family that they can't go back to their school. There's no room at that grade level at their school. So we're having to talk about whether or not we do, have to allow them to go to an A-grade school. So that's another limitation that we have related to the capacity at grade levels.
So as a follow-up to that,
That's what mine is as well.
do we know then what capacity level we have left? Do we know what the maximum student population we can have in the school?
We do. We can get that for you. We can look at we know how many students will fit in each section and how many seats we have. That's something we can come up with.
Okay, a couple of things. First, as a follow-up to Mr. Bryant, I do want to ask, should we be putting out some kind of verbiage about prioritizing the mental health of our students K through 8 for anyone that's having noticing symptomatic issues at home that maybe it would be best to look at in school if they're remote? Have we done anything with that for SEL?
I'm going to ask Dr. Collage to come to the microphone. She can answer that question.
And I have the same relevant questions for high school, but I know, are we deferring high school questions? Okay.
Yeah, we've started to have some conversations for students. I would tell you that the priority that we've had to date for the start of the school year have been our students that are entitled to special education services. But I'm meeting tomorrow with our high school and middle school-based mental health folks, and that's part of our conversation.
Well, that's my follow-up question. So regarding IEPs and 504s, I mean, we're 4 weeks into the school system. Where are we with managing those cases for K through 12?
And so today was the first day we had some of our Strive students back in person at the high school. So we've started to roll those groups of students back to in person. And our students at the middle school level have been daily since the start of the school year.
Okay, so the caseloads are being managed for 9 through 12 virtually.
For some students, but some students are in person at the high school.
Okay.
9-12.
I don't even know where to start, so, okay, that's, I would say it's to the board, go, you can sit down. Okay. I don't care. This is for the board. I don't want to come across angry. I'm a senior, as we know. But I would echo the sentiment of what a lot of our speakers talked about. And I just want to share how I personally feel. I feel like this board has had a history of, for many cycles, to be sidelined for our 3 main goals, which is to set the direction of the goals that we are to govern, to set the direction of the goals, and the staff runs with it, to create the policies, and to evaluate how that's going by the superintendent, who's ultimately responsible for everything. It's a big job, but I feel like we've been sidelined and we're sitting idle with the status quo and we're not defining the progress. and we should be defining direction. I've seen kids meltdown in high school who can't function with the e-learning because they have their teacher scrolling through a 400-page document and they can't do that and be on Google Meets at the same time, so they're getting an F in their class. I've seen seniors cry because they have no ACT, SAT. They have no idea what's going on with the SAT. They're supposed to be in school taking it next week, but no documentation has come home. They know nothing about it. I've talked about the lunch program because I know seniors who don't eat. Juniors, freshmen, who don't have access to food. We are failing our kids, and we need to set the direction. To the people in the audience that have talked to us about our decisions, we haven't made those decisions about high school. We have let the administration make those decisions, and we've taken the heat. But it's on us. We're the people that have been voted in. It's our responsibility. And every day, I see kids turn into a shadow of who they used to be because of the decisions we're not making. One of those kids is mine. And he's a senior. He has an IEP, and the last 2 years of his life have completely altered the direction in which he will go because of the choices of this district.
That's right.
Now, I can fix that, I'm his parent. But there are 13 other thousand children out there that I cannot fix. I have tried and I've almost killed myself doing it. Literally with health issues. So, I know it's not fun to have me back because I get on a pulpit and that's annoying. But I take my responsibility for this too. It's my fault too. I failed. So I want to do what I can to try to get us back. When I voted in September in high school, for the plan, I thought we were coming back in September. Coming back in October is not an acceptable solution for me. So we have to figure that out. The technology we have in place, and Dr. Pearson and I had a very long conversation last Friday, is not a technology that I think is acceptable. I'm very disappointed at Google Meets. I'm glad we're getting Zoom in. The students are struggling, the high school in particular, and I'm guessing half of the middle schoolers. And I don't know what's going on in the elementary for the remote students. I hear mixed reviews, I have to be honest. So we have to change technology. I don't know that we're doing anything with SEL and checking on our kiddos. I do think our teachers are working hard. I think our administration is working hard. I don't know that we're bringing all our stakeholders together. Who was it that said that? Kathy McGinley.
Yeah.
I wore the be kind. This is for everybody though. Community too. We're not being kind to each other at all. You guys too. Us too. We have to be kind to each other. We're gonna lose lives and not for COVID.
For sure. Yeah.
And it affects our teachers and our administrators. They don't want to be here some days either. I'm just going to talk from the heart and tell you that you're making everyone here feel like, not you guys, but like the situation, not want to be here. They don't want to work in this district. They don't want to be on the board. President Manhattan and I sit in a meeting every week with the top presidents in the top 8 districts across the state. All these presidents have had years and years of being on boards. They're up for election. Not one of them is running right now. Because communities across the state are frustrated. I appreciate it. I just told you how frustrated I was with my own family situation. But we're gonna lose years and years of experience because nobody is being kind to one another. and talking to each other. And everybody's jockeying. So I think we need to put the egos away. I've said this so many times in education. It's not worth it. It's not worth dying over. Life is more important. Put the egos away. We have to figure out what we're gonna do to fix it. But we have to be kind and talk to each other and not scream at each other and not unfriend each other and not be unkind to each other and not Karen each other or whatever the comment is. And so that's my soapbox. I will get off of it, but I appreciate that you're getting the technology going. I have more comments for high school, but I think for remote in general, the technology and social emotional are areas we need to focus on. The teachers are not aware of the technological obstacles that kids have at home. They're kind of plugging along on their fully functional system, and half their class might not be able to follow along. So I think maybe we need to figure out in educating our instructors somehow about kids that can't follow along in middle school and high school. Because there's a lot of kids that have such a lag time, and whether they need a hotspot or they have a couple kids in the house or whatever it is, we talked about in my household, I try to cohort study to work on some of that social emotional loneliness. And so that does mess up our hotspot or our Wi-Fi. So, I think the teachers need to be maybe a little bit more informed about that. And then the social emotional piece, we need to get more involved, the social workers, the counselors. I don't know what, I know they're working hard, but they're not talking to the kids that I know of. Okay, sorry, thank you.
All right, if I can just jump in, back on Mr. Bryant's point, if we have 244 students have moved from in-person to remote, and you may have kind of touched on the response to this, and if you have, I apologize, but do we have kind of a wait list for, like, somebody moves out, somebody can move in? So that, I think that might help balance the numbers as well. But obviously, the logistics are not as simple as 244 out, 244 in.
Yeah, you're talking about coming back to in-person from remote?
Yeah, because I know we're starting to get some of those in-person classes are starting to shrink.
Yeah.
And some of those remote classes are starting to get bloated. And if there are people that are waiting, and I don't know if there are, I don't know what the situation is. I imagine based upon some of the comments tonight, at least at some levels, there might be.
Yeah.
So.
We are trying to work with families that are interested in doing that. So if they'll contact either Mrs. Geyer for elementary or Mr. Mulford for secondary, then we can walk through that process. That's something that
Just as a follow-up though to that, so if we have capacity at the elementary school, for example, to have a student come back, is it a true statement that they would be allowed to come back? We are not sending students to another school or telling them they have to stay remote because of teacher resource configuration.
So there's layers there. Our only limitation is capacity based on the health and safety guidelines.
Right.
So for example, if you have a second grader that wants to come back to, let's say, Davis, and all of our sections in second grade are capped at 16 because of capacity, and they're all 16s right now, then we don't have room for you to come back as a second grader.
Correct.
So we might say to you, we can accommodate you in second grade, but that you'll have to go to Lincoln, or you'll have to go to Monmouth. We'll have to find you a place where there is a spot. So that happened today. There was a school where a student wanted to come back, and we didn't have room at that grade level because it was full. It happened to be that at that particular grade level at that school, that none of those 244 students are students that nobody left that grade level. So we don't have space there.
So it is a case-by-case, school-by-school, grade-level-by-grade-level basis. And it's not based on teachers. Our teachers are doing everything they possibly can do. It's that in most of our buildings, we are at capacity. We've taken every available classroom, because we had to reduce the class size to those smaller numbers based on capacity. We've had additional staff members take on those class sections. As you know, we had to add teachers, and we're wall to wall with classrooms and kids.
I just want to make sure, because as you spoke about earlier, we have teachers that are moving to remote teaching work. And I just want to make sure that we do not have a situation where students are trying to come back to Davis, for example, but because we have reallocated that teacher to be a remote teacher, that now that student has to be diverted.
Yeah, so let me rephrase that for you, because that's a really good point. Most of what's having to happen with shuffling is at the middle school level. And it's more on like a course-by-course basis. Like we look across the teaching load and we realize now, instead of having 5 sections of English for this particular teacher, there's only 4 sections, and we really need another remote section. So that teacher may pick up a remote English section and continue with 4 sections of in-person English, for example. So that's the kind of shuffling. I don't think that there's been a case where we've had to collapse a grade level section at elementary at this point.
So do you need from the board any more K through 8 remote teachers to be approved from us?
We are good with remote. We still have from the pool that you allocated 1 or 2 positions that we could hire.
Okay.
So we're okay at elementary. And middle school, we can accomplish with overloads or reshuffling sections for now.
So you don't need any more resources, because that's what we're here for. Okay.
I also want to point out, I'm aware, as I mentioned, made my comments, I'm aware that it is easier for a student to allocate a teacher to a student when they're going from in-person to remote, because that teacher could be anywhere. So I understand, that's why I say I know there are logistical problems, and you just mentioned one of them. But that's just something I would encourage as best we can. I think everybody here probably feels that in-person is best. I know for myself, I do think it's best to be in person. So if as much as we can possibly do that, I encourage that we do it.
I'm a little concerned about the idea of collapsing sections at the middle school or even the elementary school. It just, the idea of taking, even 15 students saying, your teacher has to go teach remotely, we're going to put you in another class. It's very hard for me to take in if someone told my kid that needed to happen. So I think we need to do everything in our power to make sure that does not happen.
It's also asking, do we need additional people? Do we need more bodies? So we don't move kids out of teachers, do you know what I mean? So if we have an overload of remote kids, we just bring in more teachers. I don't want to pick and choose kids out of classes, because that's just more shake-up for them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm
Okay,
saying.
I would agree. So I guess we're asking administration, should that have a need? Come let us know and see if we can, in the budget, figure out how to, let us know if we can afford it, and then we'll try to solve it. Does that make sense? Is that what you're asking? Okay. Does anyone else?
I've been under the impression that you have given us those heads up.
Yeah.
And that we did that at the beginning. What we can't predict is what families need to do. And therefore, I think it's all of our board responsibility to be sure that we are meeting the needs of kids. I think this board has. I think this is the most complicated experience that we will ever go through. It's very moving, and it's really tough to hear what families are going through. But I also believe really strongly that this district has worked really hard to get kids back to school. I'm waiting to hear. We haven't gotten there yet. We haven't heard the story, so I'm waiting to hear. But I think the idea that this board has to say to the administration, come get more resources, I think the board, they come to us and ask for those resources. So I don't believe that we would turn you down on the, if you need teachers. So keep that in the forefront of your mind. We want kids in front of teachers.
If this is a bit of a straw poll, I'll echo that. Again, I encourage, as much as possible, we're getting those kids back to as much normalcy as we can get them to. And I mentioned, I know that remote kids can kind of come from anywhere, and it's always best to keep them with their home school, obviously, so that they can make those connections, because ultimately what we want to do is have them go back to their home school. So, but I'll echo Ms. McKay's word, that if that is what we need, I don't think there's anybody in the board that would I'll speak for myself. I would be in favor of whatever we need to do to get those people in place. As long as it's something that's within our budget. And I think we've managed the budget pretty well. And I think that the district has managed the budget pretty well. I think we're in good, strong enough shape to probably absorb that kind of impact right now.
And Ms. McKay, I'm sorry, I would agree with your K through 8. Personally, I do not feel we have done that 9 through 12. I feel like we needed resources to get our 9 through 12 back to school faster. So I would disagree with you on that issue. But I do agree with the K through 8. Sorry.
And just another point on that too, I don't think that anybody at the table is disputing that the district leadership or the staff is not working hard. I think for several of us, we are looking for out of the box thinking. We are looking for creativity, particularly at the high school level. Probably like several of you, I was one of the 87% that I want my kids back in school. And I've been very transparent of that with you, Dr. Pearson, and also with you, Mr. Mannheim, for several months. So I think that is where the frustration is coming from. I think K through 8, clearly, other than some of these nuances that I do have a concern could go awry, I think the district leadership has done a good job. But, again, to your point.
Well, I would really like to hear what the high school reopening is, so I'm sorry, Mrs. Barker, did I interrupt you?
Go ahead.
No, I would like us to get to the reopening so we can see what it is.
If you have more on this, that's.
I actually would like to ask Mr. Mannheim to give him a 5-minute break before we move on to high school. We've been sitting here for about 2 hours, so.
That's fine. So, 8:52, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
There's one, right? For the teacher, I usually go to the one through the hallway, that's right now.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I tried to do that, yes.
at 9 p.m. So we left off, finishing our discussion about remote learning, and I think everyone's anxious to get to NFB, which is the high school return to in-person learning update. So with that said, Dr. Christian, hand over to you.
Yeah, so what I'd like to talk to you tonight about is our reopening high school plan for in-person learning and kind of the structure that we hope to use as we look at bringing students back to the high school. We have this graphic here that actually helps highlight the stages that we will need to move through as we bring students back to the high school. Today, we are actually at stage 3. We started stage 3 today. We added some additional small groups and programs back to the high school. These are students that are accessing mostly in-person or in-program instructional intervention kinds of programs. These are also students that are in our ELL or bilingual programming. Those students were brought back today in addition to the other special programs that were already back in our high schools prior to today. I also want to highlight that over the next few weeks, we are going to be offering the PSAT and SAT to students at every grade level. There are different testing dates depending on the grade level and whether or not it's actually a national testing date or not. And so I'm going to show you those in just a minute. I think the next 2 stages, which are the ones that I anticipate we would move through prior to being in phase 5 of the Restore Illinois plan, which is when there is a vaccine, would be having the opportunity to have up to 25% of our students in person first, and then 50% of our students in person back at the high school after we successfully bring 25% back. This is something that we learned at the middle school, the benefit of bringing them back in smaller groups. In the middle school, we did grade levels, so it was half of 6th grade, half of the other half of 6th grade, half of 7th, the other half of 7th, half of 8th, the other half of 8th, prior to bringing back 50% of the building. At the high school, that's going to be really important. The building is large, the number of students is large, and we want to make sure that we have all of the right health procedures and protocols in place. I anticipate that phase will actually probably be short. Similar to what we did at the middle school, I would think that we would move through that maybe once with everybody, and if that goes well, then we would be able to move on to the next step. So we can talk more about that in a minute, but that would be the next step after this particular phase. I want to talk about stage 3. I already mentioned that we have instructional intervention programs and our Fox Valley Career Center programs are coming in person for those classes and programs at this time. We did add some additional programs today, and then these are those testing dates that I talked about. So in the next few weeks, we already have 6 days where either only one grade level is coming to school or they're non-attendance days for students. So you can see the 23rd is SAT, October 6th, which this is a change because of PSAT's requirements, but we are now doing freshmen on the 6th of October. The 14th is a national testing day. That's the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So that's the PSAT for juniors on October 14th. And then the 29th is the PSAT for sophomores. So all 4 of those days, we already will have those grade levels coming to school in person to take their exam. In addition to that, those 3 days at the bottom are non-attendance days. Thursday's parent-teacher conferences. Friday the 9th is a teacher workday, and then Monday the 12th is a holiday. So those dates are happening in this next stage. Once we kind of get through that, then it's going to be time to move to stage 4 and stage 5. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we are looking at. I know that tonight people mentioned the variety of modalities that occur when we move to any kind of hybrid or in-person learning. And I don't want to miss the fact that it becomes increasingly more complex for teachers to manage as they're working with some students in their class that are remote, some students in their class that might be on the hybrid schedule, and ensuring that students and are getting what they need. Right now in our current fully remote schedule, students are able to access 180 minutes of instruction per class per week. And one of the things that we're working on is trying to maintain the integrity of the contact time while also being able to manage the different modalities. So we have a team of teachers from both high schools that are working with district administration to try to plan for that and what that looks like. I think that one of the things that they realized and highlighted for us is that there are some best practices around trying to manage those multiple modalities in addition to just some technology tools that are necessary. Maybe some different camera systems for the classroom, multiple screens for teachers to use, one with their resources, another maybe with students that are remoting in. And so we're working with them to identify what those are and to try to get those ordered. I do want to just mention, you probably know we've talked about it before when we talked about Chromebooks, but there is a supply chain problem with technology tools and resources. Everything from batteries to chips to cameras to screens to devices. As you know, many of those things are manufactured overseas. There is some trade embargo kinds of issues that are happening with that, but there's also just the fact that so many places were shut down for so much time in the spring that things have not been manufactured and there's a backlog. Combined with the demand, we do have trouble finding things, and you've been updated on that several times. So we are trying to figure out what they need for the class to manage those classroom experiences for students and remote learners as well, and we want to get those things in place. I don't want to miss the staffing challenge because we do have that at the high school in particular, in a little bit of a different way than what we have at the middle school and the elementary, as teachers work with students at older age groups, at higher grade levels. Their background experience and training becomes more specialized. I think you know that at the secondary level, teachers have degrees in their content area. And so, you know, if you're a physics teacher, then you've been trained in physics in particular, for example, and because of that, we do have some staff at the high school that may have a medical exemption or reason that they can't come to work in person in the current context. And so we will have to work out some situations where they might be remoting in to provide instruction at the high school level while another adult is sitting in the classroom with that group of students. We're collecting information at this time. We sent a survey out to staff to make sure that we know where they fall as far as those exemptions are concerned to plan for that. And we hope to have all of that back tomorrow and to be able to work towards identifying who might need that kind of support from a staffing perspective. In addition to that, we have other people who are teaching remotely because of their current situation and with maybe family commitments, and those folks we're going to be asking to come back to school. So it's really the medical exemptions that are the biggest concern for us right now as we plan related to credentials, particularly for hard to fill or more focused content areas. We want to make sure we're able to accommodate all those. We just have to plan for it, and that's what we're working towards. I do also want to mention that at the high school, the health and safety protocols are extremely complex because of the number of students that students come in contact with throughout the course of the day. One of the reasons why we were able to open elementary first is because in an elementary classroom, those students are self-contained for the majority of the day. Most of them are walking to the exterior door of the building and coming in their classroom from outside. Their special teachers are coming to them in their classroom, and they stay in a cohort for the entire day. At the high school level, students change classes for every period, and they are intermingled with other students from other grade levels. We don't have the same ability to contact trace and control at that level. So in the case where there's a student that could potentially be COVID positive, we do have the potential of having to quarantine large numbers of students. That's one of the reasons why most high schools in the suburbs are not in session right now with high school students. I think you know that about 2 weeks before school starts, the health department came out with new guidelines related to contact tracing, where anyone that was in contact with a positive case for more than 15 minutes cumulatively over a 48-hour period. So if you just take the passing periods in the hallways at the high school, you get to 15 minutes over a 40-hour period very quickly. And at that point, that's what they were requiring for quarantining and contact tracing. So that was a concern that many schools had, and we still have some concerns about trying to manage that. One of the things that we're doing as we plan for stage 3 and stage 4 is we're trying to organize the day. I think we know right now that students are on a block schedule for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So they have longer periods. We're hoping that we can maybe maintain some of that schedule when we move to in-person so that there are fewer opportunities for passing periods throughout the course of the day. So we can limit the possible movement because they'll be in those blocks instead. We also have the potential to look at some other things related to lunch and when periods have late start and early dismissal so that we can put those on the capstones of the school day so that it's possible that those could also be periods where we could limit. So we're looking at the structure of the day to see if we can limit movement, but then also be able to control the number of students that are in the building at any given time and have it focused strictly on students that have to be there for those particular courses. So those are some of the things that we're working on as we plan for those stages. I can say to you right now, our target date is the beginning of the second quarter. We hope to be back in person at the high school by that time, and we're moving in that direction. Please note that in stage 3, which we're in right now, we already have a significant number of days in the next several weeks, either because of testing or the holiday break that's in there, where we're not in attendance. So there really are not that many additional days, and we do need those days for planning and for helping with staffing tools and ensuring that we have everything in place. So that's kind of where we are in the planning process right now. I'd be happy to answer questions that you might have.
So just as a starting point, just for everyone's education, the beginning of second quarter is what?
It's October the 19th.
Okay. On the other slide that you had put up, are those the only measurements or milestones that need to be achieved to get to the stage 4 25%?
These here?
Yep.
Yeah. These are the issues we're problem solving around right now.
Okay. And of those items, what are at risk of not being achieved?
I think right now our first priority is to work on the staffing issues, which we hope to have in a very short time because we'll have the survey results back tomorrow. The technology tool is the next piece just because of the supply chain concerns, whether or not we're going to have the equipment in time, but we're working with the staff representatives to help us identify things that we need. So I think those would be the two biggest obstacles. I think it's always great to have more time for professional learning, but I will tell you that our staff has done a really tremendous job of being very responsive, and we'll continue to support them as we can as they move, just realizing that this is yet another change in the instructional practices that they'll implement as they manage those multiple modalities in classrooms and across courses.
So just to follow up to that, related to the staffing and the teacher piece, I guess I'm surprised that we don't have awareness of all of the teachers' needs related to possible exemptions already today.
So we did start the year with that question. We, however, have some teachers that are working remotely because they needed to for family reasons. Right. And we allow them to do that under the current situation because it's fully remote. But when we need them to come to in-person instruction, it's possible that there are staff members that will say, I'm sorry, I can't. I need to take family first leave, which as you know is available to teachers to take. And if that's the case, then we either need to find another staff member to teach that course or that class or make some kind of alternate arrangement. So that's why we had to do this second round of surveying, is now that we are looking to move to in-person, have those family circumstances change to the point that they may choose to take a leave.
Okay, so the 41% I think that are at St. Charles East that are remote, I think it's 21% at St. Charles North. what is the percentage of that already have medical exemptions and we know cannot return to in-person?
Mr. Moore, do we know that question?
I'll give you, it's roughly 10%.
10% have medical exemptions?
Very good. But again, as Dr. Pearson said, we were generous with handing out for approving work from home. So we would go back and review each of those.
Per high school, or was that just for East, the 41, 10% of the 41, or 10% of both high schools?
10% of the full staff.
Full staff, okay.
It's more at East than at West.
Right.
Okay, I just have a couple more, and then I certainly will let my colleagues ask questions. Okay, so when do you anticipate then that we would be able to move to stage 5, assuming that stage 4 progresses?
So at the middle school, we only did phase 4, what is stage 4 here, for one rotation. So we brought 25% back for one time, so everybody learned the process, the procedure, walked their schedule, figured out how the building works, and then we were able to move to the next stage. I think our hope would be able to do it as short a time as possible. So the best case scenario is a one-time rotation, and it takes 2 weeks to do that because kids come 2 days, would come for 2 days. They would have an odd, right now, they're having odd classes and they're evening classes. In our current structure, if that's what we're able to keep, then it would take 2 days per quarter. So a total of 8 school days over a 2-week period to bring everybody back to 25%.
Okay, so can I just, using letters, instead of A, B, C, D, it'd be A, A, B, B, next week, C, C, D, D. I'm just trying to clarify.
That's one possible way to do that.
Okay.
And can I just clarify, you're hoping that would start October 19th, or would the rotation begin before October 19th?
Our hope is that would start on October 19th. That week is when we would start with the stage 4, moving to stage 5. So if we did that rotation, then we would do stage 4 would be the October 19th week, and the following week, which I think is the 26th. And then the following is the first week of November, and by then we could be in stage 5. That's the best case scenario. If we do one rotation of 25% and then move to
Okay, so I have to, I'm going to talk for a little bit and then throw something out. It really sounds like it's still in the brainstorming mode, which concerns and surprises me. I was really led to believe, and I think others may feel the same way, and I don't know, I'll speak for myself, but I was led to believe that the plan for high school was temporary to be remote, and that it would give everyone more time to plan. We create a plan for a return to learn within buildings. Small groups were not just supposed to be our self-contained students, as well as our students who are English language learners. And then testing, that's just testing. I think that's not learning. So it was supposed to be necessary for hands-on learning, lab learning that was supposed to take place. We'd like to believe it would be much more robust in the beginning as we headed for that October 19th date. I had asked for the board to see the plan twice, once at L&T and once at the board meeting in August. And the reason I was insisting the board see this plan prior to it being sent out to the community is that really the purpose was to ask questions and give direction, which is what the board does need to be able to do to represent our constituents' interests. I feel as though that just disappeared. And all of a sudden we get a robocall, plans out, and we saw it all at the same time that everybody else did. I was surprised to see what it was. I know everybody in education is working hard. I'm not going to deny anybody that. We have a dwindling group of educators in the state of Illinois, And I don't know that this will make it any better. However, I think what I need to see is a complete plan with all of the particulars. And I know you're working towards that, but we need to know the date that that's going to show up at our doorstep. Because we do need to give guidance on this. This is important for our community, and I know that it's hard work, but we need to see that and be able to say, you know, this represents our interests. This does not. And we're aware of all of the pieces that go into play, all of the different groups that have all of their different rules. But I think we can, honestly, a month of 25% of our kids being in school, I don't know what that gives them. And it being November before we can do a 50-50, a hybrid model, I feel like that's too late. I would like to see this speed up in a different way. And I also know that there are people who feel differently about that. People who feel differently that we shouldn't be pushing to be in school. And their concerns are just as important to me as the concerns of the other thought. But I think that we need this plan in place. We need to see it, and then we can determine whether or not it meets the needs of all of our learners.
Just a follow-up, you had mentioned earlier, is the intention that the teachers in the classroom are also going to be live streaming to those that still choose to be remote?
We're working on the schedule for what that looks like, but we have to manage, right now, all our course sections, everyone's fully remote. So when we come back to school, some of the students in a class period will be on what would be an A section, some will be B, and potentially some of the students will be remote-only students. So that's one of the complexities that we're working through as we plan, is what does that look like? You know, it can be anything from what most high schools are doing right now, which is synchronous versus asynchronous for students. So basically they're going to school 2 days a week, and the other two or 3 days a week they have some kind of remote or asynchronous learning experience. We're trying to see if we can do something a little bit more than that based on managing the class in a different way, and that's one of the pieces we're working on under those instructional practices, under that instructional practices category.
Okay, so how are we, I guess, even putting the logistics aside, how are we measuring the quality of the education that the high school students have gotten up to this point and are going to get through this phased piece as well? They have 180 hours a week of instruction. I'm not observing a lot of intense independent learning. So how are we measuring that all of the content is being covered, is being quality instruction, and so forth?
So Dr. Herman may have some things to add to this, but I will just mention initially, within our departments, they have identified those essential standards. So we have the Illinois Essential Standards document. Then, of course, our departments walk through an instructional gap analysis on their staff development day, which was prior to the Labor Day holiday. So they identified, based on those essential standards, what they felt like were the areas of focus or need. And then, depending on the department and the team and the course, they have their standards and then their course assessments. And of course, at the high school level, we have common assessments for each semester for our courses. So that allows us to measure student progress and what they've acquired in each of those courses.
But are you referring to finals though? Because my understanding is those have been canceled.
We have used finals in the past. They are common finals, but we can give the same assessment, not as necessarily a final exam, to give us formative information about student.
I guess I'll go here. So I've been under the impression that this has been a staffing issue. That's why we could not open the high school. We had a plan in place, but we just could not make it work with staffing. What has changed, or what are we going to be able to staff these buildings on October 19th? I don't see this huge shift, or I didn't hear anything from what was discussed about how we're gonna be able to get staff into the buildings to where we can get kids back in the buildings as well.
What you highlighted is one of the big challenges that we've identified, and that's the piece that we're working on right now. We did ask for that data to be to us by tomorrow. So we'll know what people's needs are and what their selections are, and then we'll have to staff from there. So I should be able to answer that question for you in short order. But that's what we're working towards, is to be able to staff the building in such a way that we can bring students back.
Also, just, this is, you said also with just the, with instruction, I think it's important for everyone to understand here. You know, I've heard a lot of different people talking about, you know, streaming, you know, teachers streaming their class to both the you know, virtual classes and online, and, you know, asynchronous and synchronous learning. You know, I'm on the front lines of this. I'm seeing what it's like to teach every day. It is not easy, but I'm only doing it remotely right now. Our middle school teachers, they have the asynchronous and the synchronous. I've heard the words unsustainable out of their mouths on multiple occasions. We have to be very careful with what the ask is for these teachers to make sure that we're not putting too much on them. I'm not saying we have to do what we can to get the kids back into the buildings, but we have to be really careful to make sure that we're providing the professional development and the resources that the staff needs to make sure that they can do the job correctly.
I'm gonna combine Mr. Bryan and Mrs. Barker's comments and talk about the plan. If we had a more specific plan, we would know exactly what we need to do as a board. So, in resources, do we need to approve proctors for people that are the 10% that are gonna be at home? And potentially teaching from home, is there a proctor in the classroom that may help that classroom environment for the live students, they're all live, but you know what I mean, the in-person students, it's what happens after 2 hours of meeting. Where you're in person, and then the remote students, obviously, that person who's proctoring, if you have the technology, there's so many intangibles here that we don't have a plan for yet. So do we even know what we need for resources? Because do we need proctors? The stuff that we're hoping to get for technology, the other slide, the instructions, tech tools, the staffing, how do we help? We don't know. We don't know if we're even gonna be able to get that because of it's being sourced across seas. That's the part that's frustrating as a board member personally, is we wanna see the tangible pieces. And I feel like that's not all the way done yet. And I don't know how we make decisions or how we help direct. And to Mike's point, we don't overstretch our teachers, and Mr. Bryan, and to Ms. Barker's point, we have everything in front of us and make decisions when we don't have all the pieces. So I don't know how we do that when we're not given everything.
So I'd like to kind of just add on to that. That was one of the questions I had is are we gonna have a need to hire, as we had asked about the elementary, do we have a need to hire teachers? And if so, the other question is, are they available? Do we have the availability of teachers? Because they're, in a 30-year teaching career, this is the first time I've heard that there's a teaching shortage where there really was. So I don't know what's available out there as far as teachers if we do need the staff. So, and that's a problem that's not just for this district, that's for every district.
Well, or is it just we need a proctor in the classroom and they'll be teaching from home? We don't know those answers yet.
Well, and so that's why I'm asking, before we get to proctors, is there a need for additional certified staff? If there's any need for that, that's something we need to look at. Again, this is, as Mr. Bryant said, I'm doing this myself. I'm teaching 100% remote, and the word unsustainable has come out of my mouth more than once. And I know nobody wants this. Nobody wants this to be the way we go. So
Well, and to your point, Mr. McNally, you said, I think the board's intention is to be happy to help provide whatever tools we need to find solutions for all of our students' needs. We have remote for people that need remote. We want to try to provide an in-person for people that want in-person. But we have to know what to provide.
Right, and so I guess that's kind of where we need to know what the community's needs are, and there have been 244 minds changed since the beginning of the year, and probably more than that. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to teach, and for myself, I would much rather be in person as a teacher. I would much rather have my kids. I have three students who are at the high school, and I'd much rather have them in the building as well. So we need to figure out the best way to get there as quickly as we can. So, and of course, under the state's guidelines, but I think we're working well within those, so.
Dr. Pierce?
Go ahead.
I don't have any student personally who goes to high school. I have listened and watched, and I am concerned about our kids. I'm going to be really blunt. October 19th is too late to start. I'm not doing this to get applause. I'm doing this because I personally was under the impression that would be when our kids would be back in the high school. I thought how the middle school did, their rotation worked really well. It worked really well. Would it help you in your work if the board said very strongly, we got to get the kids in by a certain date? I realize that there are all kinds of things you have no control over, which is the health and safety stuff. But would it help you in moving people along if we gave you we need a plan and we want kids in the building, at least the 50% stage 5 by October 19th?
It absolutely would help for you to give us that guidance. I think that is certainly the direction that we're headed. I would be happy to try to bring 25% back prior to the 19th if we can do that. I just want to reemphasize that there are not that many school days between now and then, believe it or not. If you look at a calendar and you realize the testing dates that we have and the holidays that are happening, there's not that many days. So I'm happy to work in that direction. I also need to just reemphasize that there are, several, as you've already pointed out, we are working through a lot of these variables and details that are constantly in motion. I also want to say, it's always easy to look in hindsight and say, well, at this point you should have, at this point you should have. Unfortunately, at that point when a decision was made, we had different information. We had different guidance at different times along the process. So, we'll look back at this after the fact and realize there were a lot of things that we could have done differently or maybe done better. But we had to respond in the moment in some of the planning that took place. And so we're kind of in the same place now as we kind of respond to what's going on with staffing and also with our technology tools as well. So I'm happy if you want to say by the 19th we want 50% back and you want us to go and put that plan together, then I'm happy to do that.
I guess just, respectfully, I guess I'm just shocked that we can certainly give that direction. I'm just shocked that we would need to do that. Our high school students are losing time, and we would like to get them back in school as soon as possible.
I would like to say that from a district administrative standpoint, our teachers, our principals, we all share that same belief. We want them back as well. So I think that's the direction that we want to go. I guess the problem that I'm having trouble communicating is the complexity that's involved. I mean, there's a reason why most high schools in the suburbs are not in person. It's not just an issue for our district. Yes, Geneva is, but if you look at all of the other districts that you as a board like to compare us to, they are not there either yet, for the same reasons that we're facing. So we want our kids back, and we want to get there. And honestly, our schedule is more aggressive than many districts who are in the same boat. And so I guess at this point, I'm feeling like that there's a perception that that's not what we want, but it is what we want. It's just, it's very complex.
I can only speak for myself. I am looking for out of the box thinking, creativity, figuring out some way to get the students at the high school level back into school. Because again, they just do not have the same amount of time left to accomplish some of these key milestones that they need to do. And it's just not as effective remote. It's just not. It's hard enough, I think, to connect with teenagers in person, and especially in a group classroom setting. When they're remote, I think it's 10 times harder, and you have a huge number of students that are not participating for a variety of reasons, and then as a result, their education is suffering. That one reason among many. And it's not just Geneva. There are other school districts that have their high school students back in session in our surrounding area. So we would like to take the best of all of those and figure out also what may work for our district that doesn't work for theirs, and make progress to get our students back in.
I do think that, we've firmly said 50%. Many of us have said that back by the 19th. The 25%, honestly, it's just, that'll be confusing. It's frankly, those of you middle schoolers, I didn't know it was on any day, and I think I'm well informed. So I think that we just need to do that. It needs to be 50%. We know it's complex. We know every single human being in education wants to just be back in person and pretend like this never happened. We know that. We know you want the kids back in. But at this point, I think we need to just out of the box thinking, as Ms. Gregory said, and it's not just about staffing. What else do we need? What else can we do to make this better? And whether or not that's having an alternate location to spread kids out. That was one of ISB's recommendations, is that be prepared to rent space. We don't have it. So I don't know what that means or what thought has been given to that, but I don't care what it is. Obviously, we don't need like diamond windows, but something that makes it work. It makes the teachers feel as though, okay, we can do this again. We're willing to hear it and make decisions based upon what you bring us.
And in speaking with the other districts, I was just thinking the Charleston Hall was empty. I could not stop thinking that when you were talking, but in talking with other districts, as I mentioned earlier, President Mannheim and I, we speak to Wheaton Warrenville, we speak to U46, Elmhurst 205, Naperville 203, 204, Barrington 220. So everyone is still trying to figure this out as well. But I really feel like you tapping into those resources, there's some, and I know you speak with all those superintendents, there's some really good out of the box thinking, trying to get their high schools going that are the same size. Unfortunately, some of our neighbors are smaller, and so that's a little bit challenging for us, but they're one high school, so the size of one of our high schools. But there's opportunity to share amongst, we're all in this, as the meme says, sinking boat, right? We're all in the same ship. So there is an opportunity to share of what's worked so far for people and what's not worked. What was nice is we were the pioneer K through 8, and people came to 303 and asked us what worked and what didn't work. And so we're still sitting here with high schoolers remote. We have the opportunity now to go to people who are back for high school and get that information quicker and have this go quicker. I really thought we'd be back in by now. I mean, that was my impression when this all started. And I know we had a delay because the IDPH release. And that certainly is understandable because that made things very complicated when they released 2 weeks before the start of school. So that was not helpful. But I do think after 4 weeks, we would be farther along. So I think we can use our resources.
So maybe my final point on this, I know that teachers, no teacher has gone into the profession so that they can look at pictures of a dozen kids. I know I didn't. I know I hate that. I know I hate the distractions from multiple households when several kids have their mics unmuted and I'm hearing everything going on in the back. It's far from ideal. Your interactions aren't the same with kids. You don't know who's paying attention or who's not. When you're in a live classroom, you know who's paying attention and who's not. You can go and attend to that. You don't even know who to attend to that with. Those are some of the logistical things that you probably don't see when you're not trying to do this. I hate it myself as a teacher. I hate it for my kids. And I encourage us to go back as logistically, as fast and as much as possible. And I know, we've heard that Ms. Weibel mentioned, that we're all in the same boat. And as she kind of acknowledged as well, some ships are bigger than others, and so they're a little bit harder to turn around. And so that may be the case with us, but I want to encourage us to get back as soon as possible with as many students as possible. And to Mrs. McCabe's point, if it requires kind of the impetus from the board, and I don't believe that you wouldn't be trying if the board didn't say it, but if you're looking for the board to say this is kind of the hard date, I'm perfectly happy to go along with, hey, let's pick those dates and make those our target dates and try to get there.
Ms. Weibel said that maybe the board has let the district down and the kids down. Knowing each one of you as well as I do, I don't believe that's what our hearts are. I don't think we know what the future has. I do believe that our community believes in us. I also believe very strongly that you all have been working to figure this out. But I think maybe the board has to be more direct, not because you aren't doing what we want and need, but because the situation is so complex that maybe that kind of conversation from us will lead others to help get to that end point. And I've been an administrator where the board one night says one thing and then the next month it says something else, and you as an administrator don't know where to go. So maybe we need to be at that place so you have the board behind you to get the kids back to school. So I didn't come into this meeting tonight to say this, but we need to get our kids back, and second quarter should be the target, and not start the rotation then, but to get the kids back. And whatever you need from us to make that happen, call on us. We have like a meeting every night this week. We can easily come together to make those decisions, because I truly believe that this administration knows instruction, knows how to lead, cares deeply about our kids. SEL is number one on your list, and this is just such a complex issue with a complex schedule of a high school. And now the board needs to stand up and say, we will support you to get the kids back.
Just a couple of final thoughts to echo Mrs. McKay's points. Mr. Mannheim, it may, very well make sense that we do convene again as a board at some point, especially within the next 30 days, so that we understand where we're looking at from a high school standpoint, and if decisions needs to be made, that we're able to do that. So that would be a suggestion, so we can do most of this work at the table. And then secondly, just as a follow-up, Dr. Pearson, to one of the citizens' comments, why wouldn't we want to, especially during this small group attendance phase, have these individual seniors be able to have a one-on-one session with their counselor?
Yeah, and so what she said is exactly right. That was my response. I think it's a great idea, and I'll have to talk with the high schools a bit more to see why or if or where that could happen.
Okay. As a point of order to Mr. Mannheim, do you think it would be appropriate for us to take just a verbal around to make sure, I mean, I think most have spoken up, but to make sure that everyone speaks up and talks about October 19th being a hard start instead of a soft
I think it's
open?
been pretty clear. I don't know if we need to take a straw poll. I think it's been pretty clear that the sooner the better from everyone. So, and to Mrs. Vergre's point, I can work with Dr. Pearson about setting some time if we need to get together as a board. As Mrs. McKay mentioned, you're meeting a lot the next couple of weeks even, so than that. So if we need to have a special meeting or something like that, or have it as be a discussion item in one of the committees, we can do that for sure. So I think we'll take all the feedback we've gotten from everyone tonight, and Dr. Pearson will meet with his staff, and then I'll continue to coordinate with him, and we'll get something on schedule for everyone. All right.
Sorry, just one more last question. So do we have a specific date that we're gonna get the plan with this information on how do we fix these instruction, tech tools, staffing, safety protocols, and what do you need, or is that just gonna be to be determined?
Well, I think just based on what needs to be done and your schedule, I think it's reasonable that we could have something next Monday for learning and teaching.
Okay. September 21st? That's the date. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And we have policy before.
5 o'clock.
At 5, so learning and teaching is immediately following.
The notion of 5:30.
I doubt it will be, but thank you.
All right. Then that concludes our core discussion for the evening. We do have some citizen comments. Smith, I believe, another sheet as well. So, Mrs. Barker, will you read our end of meeting citizen comment?
The school code provides for a public comment period at each board meeting subject to reasonable constraints. The purpose of this board is to limit public comment to 3 minutes per speaker to a total of 15 minutes at the end of the meeting. Speakers addressing the board are expected to maintain a reasonable level of civility. Also, personnel matters are sensitive and confidential. Comments regarding individuals should be respectful. Insults and defamatory remarks have no place in this setting. The board will terminate public comment if speakers cannot adhere to these guidelines. Please identify yourself at the beginning of your remarks.
Thank you, Mrs. Barker. And Ms. Barker did say we do also have 15 minutes for that. So again, please be mindful of the 3 minutes. Try not to go over so that we can hear everyone's comments tonight. First speaker is Mark. Is that
Mark Huber.
Mark?
So I'm Mark Huber, and I have a stepdaughter at North, and I'm a member of the independent, self-funded, reopened D303 high school group. And I had a bunch of comments, but I feel that the board is actually listening. And I want to applaud all these people for getting out and making themselves heard. So I've got a couple observations that I'm going to pivot to, so please bear with me because it's on the fly. I'm kind of astonished that the board seems to be finding out all this stuff at the same time we are. Why is this happening? This should be communicated a long time ago. This is part of the problem. Why is it taking so long for the board to catch up to what's going on? And I think I speak for the community. Nobody lives in this community, and nobody is willing to accept the mediocrity that we seem to be looking at right now. We're not going to compare ourselves to other schools. We want to lead the other schools. And most importantly, the kids are learning right now in this room. All of these kids, from the examples that we're setting. We're standing up for what we believe in. We're making a stand. You're listening, and you're holding the people accountable. That's what we want. Thank you for listening. We're going to keep watching and hope you keep it up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Lakis. Michael.
Thank you. My name is Michael Likens, and I live in this district. I have no children attending St. Charles schools, but I'm a 50-year-old tax-paying citizen. I actually am amazed at some of the information. I appreciate some of the board's comments. My son lives in another state. However, I'm a Christ follower who fears God. I don't fear COVID or any other future disease, virus, illness that may occur in my lifetime, natural or man-made. I will die one day, and we will all die someday. This is a fact because no one gets out alive. I do not fear death because of my faith in God and His promises for heaven for those that believe in Him, and I hope everyone here has the same assurance. The recent CDC data shows the average age of people dying of COVID is around 80 years old, which is about the average age of the U.S. life expectancy. The other reported COVID deaths have over 2 comorbidities as well as the COVID. Mind you, this assumes someone doesn't die from cancer or heart attack and are counted as a COVID death. Having evidence of the COVID in your body has been shown that people may not ever have any symptoms or have any chance to pass it along. The so-called curve is now a flat line. The hospitals are not overrun, but have laid off people. Other illnesses may be huge because of the decisions made by the elected government of the state. Wearing masks or maintaining 6 feet is morphed into both requirements like we see here tonight. If anyone coughs or sneezes, now people freak out because of having a cold or sinus infection and the fear of death in people. The fear and paranoia that the Illinois government and media has inflicted on our state and country is absurd. CDC data does not support continued lockdown of our children from not attending school. Children are the least susceptible to getting sick of COVID and worse, dying. If teachers were afraid of COVID, you want ideas, they can work behind plexiglass enclosures in the rooms like we see when we go shopping in the back of this room. Maybe weekend in person needs to be examined, teaching. Use other rooms for teaching, such as a gym. Work during holidays, figure it out. I work nights, weekends, or when I need to for my job because I must be flexible. Be flexible and figure it out. If airplanes can pack people into a big aluminum tube, Walmart, Home Depot, and grocery stores have people in these stores of all ages, schools should be more than safe to reopen. As someone stated earlier, if I told my company I was afraid and did not work, I'd be terminated. Plus, my ethics prevents me because I have a chance for a 0.06 of dying from COVID, even if I get it. As an engineer with over 30 years experience, I've lived in Australia for over 5 years, traveled overseas many places like Brazil twice, South Korea 5 times, Europe 20 times, China 3 times. I am concerned greatly for our country as well as here. I lived in Melbourne, Victoria, and they're in a 23-hour lockdown for non-essential people where they can only go out of their house 1 hour a day within 5 Ks of their house, which is 3 miles. This school is now essentially locking our children down in their homes in front of a computer monitor all day, which is just like being in a prison. I'm running out of time. I'll just go down to the last thing. Our objective is to make our children better and smarter than what we ever were. We also pay a lot of taxes in this state, as everybody knows. I'll go to my conclusion. Businesses, shopping places, and factories can figure it out to keep the supply chain working. This board can figure it out. The decisions this board has made are very appalling for so-called leaders. My CEO is the leader who hired me and whom I respect. Leaders lead. Be leaders and figure it out to open the schools and save our children and our future leaders. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tom Mollenhauer. Tom here. All right. Our next speaker then is Jeff.
He's not here either.
Jeff's not here either. All right. Our next speaker is Frankie.
My name is Franzetti. I didn't plan on coming here today. I was out at the protest and looked through these windows and then realized that my voice had the ability to talk for all those in my school, all 2,000 of them, each one stuck inside every day, watching our siblings leave every single morning as they go to their school. I had no premeditated script, no warning, and no preparation. In fact, I finished writing this letter roughly 60 minutes ago. However, this is simply a testimony to how much this means to me and my fellow classmates. I wrote this speech surely from my heart, using common knowledge and the ideas of the majority. I was laying in bed trying to fall asleep when I realized that the last time I'll ever be in high school would be that random day in March this year. The last thing I can recall was Mrs. Christensen announcing that students must take all of their supplies home. Everybody thought that this would be a 2-week to 1-month plan, but it persists. My junior year prom, the first prom of my life, was thrown into oblivion. I question myself to this day if I will ever be able to attend a high school prom. The dance is a staple of high school, and it was simply removed from my life. Now I must ask you, will I ever attend a prom? I must ask another question. Why can our siblings attend their middle school and elementary schools while I look out my window and watch their buses drive by? You may say that there is less contact because they have a homeroom with no passing period, but that is the reason why we have masks. If everyone is to wear a 50% effective mask, which is the standard mask, mathematics prove that there will be a 75% drop in transmission of the virus between people. Additionally, if we have to partake in the Group A and Group B plan, only half of the school will attend each day. That means that we will cut our interactions with others in half. Having a building with only half of the students, all of whom are wearing masks, will still greatly reduce the spread. With the facts I provided above, one may argue that there is still a small chance of the virus spreading. But how low do the chances have to be? How long and how extreme must we hide until we begin ruining people's lives? Time keeps moving forward whether we want it or not. Therefore, high school memories children can only make during certain 4 years of their life, are being destroyed as we hide in isolation due to a slight risk. I use the word isolation because that is exactly what this is. I sleep for 8 hours a day on my bed in my room, wake up and shower in my room, go to my cramped desk that I have in my room, and sit there for 6 hours staring at my screen in my room. After school is over, I study and complete all of my homework for 2 more hours in my room. Therefore, each day, all students have a minimum of 6 hours worth of screen time. However, the Mayo Clinic reports that anybody above the age of 12 must have no more than 2 hours worth of screen time each day. Now, just take a moment to realize that every single student is overdosing with 300% of the required screen time. I've felt confined for close to a month now. The CDC states that social isolation significantly increases a person's risk of premature death from all causes, a risk that may rival those of smoking, obesity, and physical inactivity. Is this what we want during these times? It is mental health awareness, and it should be shining a light upon all those that need human interaction, movement from one place to another, supportive teachers and counselors, and other very important amenities the school gives us which change and save lives. Why must we ignore this spotlight? Why must you guys crawl into the shadows and watch as mental health problems worsen right in front of you? We need to go back for the sake of learning, yet more importantly, for the sake of physical and mental health. Do not let our voices go in one ear and out the other simply because you are not being the ones being impacted. Empathy is the motto of D303, and without our leaders showing it, you are breeding a generation that never will.
Next speaker is Michael Whitty. All right. Next speaker is Joe Bloomquist.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Joe Blomquist, president of the St. Charles Education Association. I want to speak to everyone who's listening, parents, teachers, school board members, administrators. I think we can all agree that remote instruction is not the same. It is really hard work. It is really hard work for our students, for our parents, for our teachers, for our administrators. We don't want to be in remote instruction permanently. We can also say that hybrid instruction is not the same. It is really hard work for our students, for our parents, for our teachers, for our administrators. We thank them for all the work that they're doing at the middle school to make hybrid successful. We also know that in-person instruction is not the same. We are living in a different world right now, And this is really hard at the elementary and at the early childhood level for our students, for our parents, for our teachers, and for our administrators. And we want to thank everyone for their hard work in making sure health and safety is at the top of our list, followed by social emotional needs, followed by instructional rigor. It's really important to understand that all three of those take time. And so we need to recognize that they are all competing for the same amount of time. So no matter how our students are in at school, we need to keep that in mind. And yes, we can all agree that our students' social emotional well-being is at the top of our list beyond our health and safety. And so we are committed to that as teachers. I want to say for those teachers who it is almost 10 o'clock at night are probably listening to this and probably planning and probably filled with anxiety because they are planning weeks in advance for how they're going to be delivering their remote, hybrid, or in-person instruction. And now they are getting ready for perhaps a pivot to how they're doing that instruction. Remote instruction cannot be done the same way as in-person instruction, and thinking that we can do the same both at the same time in the same way is problematic. So I ask you to continue to let administration, the school board, the teachers, and the parents work together to come up with a plan that works for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana, friends and members.
Hello, good evening. So I've sat through this meeting tonight, and I feel compelled to kind of make some observations. And I certainly echo everything that has been said already, but I wanted to make some observations on the meeting. And the reason that I want to do so is because I don't want to be back here in 30 days, kind of talking about some of the same things. So there are a few items that I would like to highlight for everybody in the room and everybody listening. And the first thing I wrote down was disappointing. I actually could not believe that we are this far along without much of a plan at all. I felt a real sense of sadness when I heard some of this lack of preparation. So I want to have this in everybody's minds as we leave here tonight, because I suspect I'm the last person. The other thing I wanted to mention is the lack of transparency and the lack of clear communication. I think part of the biggest frustration in the community is we feel like we are always getting a changing story. And I felt that particularly when Mrs. Barker pointed out that she learned some of the plans for the first time when emails went out en masse. And if I have a board member who's hearing something for the first time, that is concerning to me. That means they gave no input into that situation. Another thing I picked up was that leaves were given out to staff quite liberally at the beginning of the school year, whether necessary or not. Now, I'm not going to question the leaves themselves, but what that tells me is that students were not at the top. And that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about students. No plan. Even the board has been surprised tonight by the lack of a plan, the lack of seeing a plan. Where are we with the plan? When is the plan going to be? Now we got September 21st, so I hope we hit that deadline. And here's something else I found really concerning. The fact that the surveys are due tomorrow. I find that very convenient that the teachers and the staff return their surveys the day after this meeting. I think that probably would have been better served if it was due yesterday. And then we would kind of know where we are at with the staff and what needs we need to fill. And perhaps some of the discussion tonight could have been on that point. The cynic in me calls that suspicious, but I will not go farther there. The bottom line is I actually agree with many of the board members. I think vote on a date. We need a little pressure here. We need to keep the momentum going. I think there's nothing wrong with the board voting on hard days. I got September 21st in my books already for the plan, and I think we skip the whole 25%, we go straight to the 50%, and we do that at least by the end of the quarter. And my final thing is, you have all of our support. I mean, we sound like we're really frustrated and angry because we are, but it's not because we don't want to do our part, we don't want to support you. If you need parents to proctor classrooms because teachers need to be remote, we are all here. I work full-time, everybody works full-time. I will take days off and I will sit in classrooms to help students. And I will help proctor those, but make sure everybody's in their seat, that the technology is working, and we will all do what needs to be done. So let's keep moving. Thank you.
All right, thank you for citizens' comments. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session by roll call vote for the purposes of, one, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee. A specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or volunteer of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body if the term is elected. And number two, litigation. When an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and pending before a court or administrative tribunal, where the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. McCallie, Mrs. Parker. Switch to the roll call.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mrs. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Ms. Weibel?
Yes.
Mr. Manheim?
Yes. All right, I believe we're meeting in here, or we're gonna be in there? Okay, so does it, people need 5 minutes?
No meeting in there, go in there.
So, we'll reconvene in 5 minutes then.
Here or?
In the back.
Fire.
I know, I see, right?